Everyone. Can you believe it? We are on the sixth episode of the Full Send iRacing podcast, and we got a good buddy of ours here, John Theodore. And I seem to say this every week, but I wouldn't have him on my show if I didn't believe this. But John is just an awesome guy for iRacing, very good for the community. Tell everyone, hey, John.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good to see y'all tonight. Happy to be on.
So, John, let's just hop right in. We got so much to talk about. I'm worried we're not going to get through it all, but if we don't, I guess I'll have to have you on another time sometime down the road. But hey, so how did you even get into iRacing? I've never heard these stories about you. I know you put up those Ask Me Anything videos, and I've watched
Yeah.
most of them, but I still haven't heard how you got into iRacing.
Okay, so the way that I got it, so it's bear with me because it's a little bit of a longer story. As you guys know, I'm known for being long-winded. So, um, I when I grew up as a NASCAR fan. I was a kid. I just liked anything that rolled. Parents were flipping through the channels, landed on a NASCAR race, and I just kind of sat down and was like, "Ooh," and just got quiet. Which is a 3-year when you're raising a 3-year-old. I have no experience with this. From what I hear, that can be a chore. So getting a few hours of just peace and quiet was great for them. So when the fast forward a little bit, when I was 10 and the original NASCAR racing game by Pyrus came out, that was literally the coolest thing ever. And for a while, the PC that we had couldn't even actually run the game, but it could run the demo. And so there was like a couple months where I was literally just doing single car runs in the demo at Talladega just because that was the closest thing that I could
Oh
get to
gosh.
anything racing NASCAR. Then I got the game and I would run full length seasons and print out the results and keep like there's probably a box somewhere in my parents' house that has all of these like dot matrix printouts of the full results of every race that I would do in the full seasons where I would set the because again I was a kid, so I would set the AI at 80%. I would turn damage off from my car. I would go wreck everyone in the field, and I would make sure that I won the race and my buddy Rusty here finished second.
Is that how you race now?
No. Well, I don't know. You guys be the judge. You guys can see my whole everything on YouTube now, so you can be the judge if that's how.
And so,
Um.
transitioning to iRacing, how did that happen?
Okay, so went through NASCAR 2 and stuff like, and for a while I was just like, man, I want a game where the cars can flip over and wreck, because that you know what what I wanted as a kid. So get into college, and I'm goofing around with NASCAR Racing 2003 season and stuff. And then after college, I was playing Forza Motorsport and some stuff like that on the consoles, and then just kind of got out of it because those games never really grabbed me. I didn't have a great setup to do it with. I was moving around a lot. I had more jobs and more addresses. After being out of college for like 8 years, I had probably 10 or 11 different jobs and 10 or 11 different addresses. So
Oh my
moving around
gosh.
a lot, I wasn't really able to have like a good any kind of sim racing setup. It was just not feasible for me to do. Um, and then I got into a bit of a long term relationship with a wonderful girl. It didn't work out, but she got me as a birthday present one year package to go run the late model at Irwindale, do like 10 laps or something like that with their
Hmm.
racing school there. And that included a trial package for iRacing. It was like a 3-month trial or something like that. So I got I got my old, seat out and stuff like that and set up uh, one of so I just switched jobs where I had been working at a game company that had gone out of business, and so they were doing a fire sale on all their old stuff. I got a PC that at the time was pretty good. It had a 2700K processor, 570 GTX graphics card, 16 gigs of RAM for $400. So
Whoa.
it was no, it was a really good deal. So
Wow.
I got that, got iRacing on there, got that set up, and I'm just running and crashing into things and terrible because I hadn't done anything racing related in year. I was playing League of Legends with our roommates and stuff like that, and I got into iRacing, and just started having a lot of fun with it. It was like, it was kind of like I fell into this game that was like, this is the game that I've been waiting ever since I was a little kid. This was the one that I had envisioned in my head as always wanted to play, but never really existed because, it was online. So you're racing against real people. You're not trying to, calibrate the sliding scale of the AI to give yourself the right level of challenge while still being able to beat them on occasion. That was always frustrating for me. And then it was always like, well, okay, I won, but the only reason I won was because I keyed down the AI to my level.
Yeah.
In iRacing, if you win, it is because in that race against people that you were matched with, you actually went out and beat them. There's a real sense of accomplishment in doing that. So, that's how I got into it. And I started in 2015 and moved back home to St. Louis after me and that lovely young woman broke up. Was, to set up my rig down in the basement and stuff like that. And when I was staying with my parents for a little bit during that transitionary period, I was paying off a little credit card debt and getting some stuff put away to save up and get a house, because after moving back to St. Louis, I was like, man, I'm done with Los Angeles, done with all this moving around stuff. Family's in St. Louis. This is where I want to be. So I wanted to get a house and really start establishing myself here. So their internet, I'd always been wanting to stream, and I actually did try streaming a couple things, and it was more that I got into the streaming thing. It was a couple different things. One is all of my friends, jobs, and stuff like that always just were sick and tired of hearing me talk about NASCAR. They're like, man, I don't care. You should start a Twitch stream where you talk about that stuff. You start a Twitch stream. We don't care about your iRacing stuff. Go find your audience, because you'd be great at it. You're clearly knowledgeable. People are gonna watch you do it, but we don't want to hear about it. So, I had been encouraged by some of my friends in the video game industry to go do something with streaming, and then I was also sitting there thinking, like, it'd be kind of cool to have just an archive of the, my whole career on iRacing. So, saving the replays, I would save replay files and stuff, but you never go back and watch the old replays. And recording the race and just being able to upload it straight to YouTube was a great way to just have an archive, because YouTube will let you. There's no limit to how many videos they'll let you upload, and as long as you've got a verified account, you can upload the whole thing. It doesn't have to be split up in chunks. So it was a great way to just archive my races. And if you ever go back and watch my really early stuff, it is very rough compared to the production quality of what I've got now. But at the same time, it's like, it's still, it's an archive. You can, if you want to just follow the story of the different races and stuff like that, that was the whole purpose, to be able to go back, now and look like, oh yeah, 2-3 years ago, how was I different at this track versus how I am now, and be able to have that whole archive where you can see that progression.
Yeah. Zimmy brings up something awesome in the chat here. He, whenever I ask people how they got started in iRacing, they bring up two people, at least in the oval side. They bring up you, and they bring up Aaron. And it seems like almost every oval racer now that I race with, you two got them started in that. So, and Zimmy says, thanks for that. I don't know if you've raced with Brian Zimmerman quite a bit. You might not remember him, though, but he's always driving that USA Firearms car. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, I know recently you just had that upgrade, didn't you, in PC hardware? And
big upgrade. So that PC that I told you about that I got for $400, that was still the same PC that I was racing and streaming on until I did this upgrade last fall.
Oh wow, you were streaming on that? Mm-hmm. And that looked
great.
Why
I was streaming at 720 and I think 60 FPS.
That's what I'm doing right now. And,
yeah, but everything on iRacing was dropped basically to the absolute lowest settings, which, to iRacing's credit, even at the absolute lowest settings, the game looks darn good.
Yes, it did. Yeah, I never once thought your stream looked bad, but I remember the day that you switched over to that, and I logged on to your stream and I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, it looks like we're playing the game firsthand.
Yeah. Well, and what I noticed also, because I also upgraded the monitor. I went from decent monitors, which were these Asus. I think they're a 27-inch monitor that's normal size
Mm-hmm.
to a MSI curved 34-inch widescreen gaming monitor,
Yeah.
which that plus the added fidelity, it was literally like upgrading to Superman vision. I always had a reputation of being able to dodge wrecks and stuff like that. Putting that to giving me a better tool where I could see more clearly further down the track just really improved things on that front. It was
Yeah.
my whole vision of everything was improved massively.
This is probably a silly question, but do you think that the monitors helped the look of the stream at all either? Or no?
Monitor
I wonder
doesn't
if it
do
didn't. I
anything
didn't
with
think
the
so,
look of
yeah.
the screen, no, but the graphics card does. What the
Yep.
monitor does is it helps my vision in the game. The monitor, I have to cut the sides of it off and try to center it up for the stream.
Oh, I see.
So there's stuff that I see in the peripheral that doesn't show up on the stream.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, guys, if you have questions for John, we already got some questions coming. We're gonna ask those at the end of the stream, at the very end, and he actually has his own deal where he does ask John anything. But there are people in here who might not be too familiar with John, and I want to know some questions. So that's a great question, wannabe. We'll check that out. All right, so we got into that stuff, and John, let's get right down to the juicy stuff.
All right.
I think all of us are doing this once or twice, and we all have rivals. So, question number one. Do you have any rivals? And we've talked about this before. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't like the guy.
Right.
We tend to believe you're gonna do everything you can to beat this guy. Doesn't mean necessarily don't like him.
So I mean, so definitely the one rivalry that's kind of come up in the Dynasty Racing League this year, after he got into me.
Oh yeah.
When I was on my way to my first win in my first league win ever, would be Anthony Burrows. Although,
Oh boy.
I got into him at Bristol completely on accident. And I know that he didn't mean to wreck me either.
Yeah.
So I understand the whole deal there, but that one is definitely more of a I've been getting my butt kicked by this kid all last year, all this year. It's like I want to beat him, more than that. The one where it's I don't like this guy,
Oh.
and I hate calling out folks by name, but if I'm gonna, it would be, and a lot of the folks in my stream kind of know him as public enemy number one over there anyway, especially folks who've been going back and know where this all originated is Sean Peleg.
Oh yeah.
And there are a couple reasons for that. So the on-track stuff is one thing. There was a thing it was really early in the the NAS fixed Daytona 500 back in 2018. So not this year's, but last year's, where we're just riding down the straightaway. We're single file. We're just riding. I'm right behind someone, and he gives me a bad bump and just it hooks me right into the wall. And probably it's honestly, looking back on it, it's probably a netcode thing. Like, it was definitely a bad bump, and he shouldn't have hit me there because I'm not going anywhere with it. There's no reason to be bumping me on the straightaway. But that's just one thing. I've had wrecks with all kinds of folks. The thing that always bugged me about him more is the disrespectful trolling that he does externally. So at the time, he was I don't know if he was running in this particular race, but he was running a one of those like meme, where you'd see some guys,
Yeah.
they'll take a real scheme and they'll kind of meme it up.
Yeah.
So this was a Tony Stewart scheme that had on the back Kevin Ward 4X. He deserved it, like that. I just found that to be absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, that's kind of far.
And he would also, he had hotkeys posted up in chat with the DW "I hope Dale's okay" quote and stuff like that. And I just don't think that making fun
Yes.
of people who have died is funny.
Yeah.
I just don't find that. I don't find that to be humorous at all.
I was just talking about this with someone in the Discord who had brought that up, and
Mhm.
yeah, guys, that I hope Dale's okay thing, that's really not funny, because
I agree.
one, Daryl, he just lost a friend, so I know you're poking fun at Daryl, but I mean, guys, Dale Earnhardt had just died, And even to this day,
Hmm.
it's not funny. I know it's been 20 years, but not
Well, and
funny.
understand it, like again, like remembering, thinking back to that day and that moment, the reason
Man,
why there was so much concern in his voice is what Daryl people. I think people forget the context of what exactly was going on. He
yeah,
had just seen his younger brother Mikey win his
exactly.
first race. Very excited for that. And he looks over and Dale's still in the car, so that's concerning enough. But what he sees when he looks over is Ken Schrader's react. Ken Schrader, who was involved in the wreck, was the first one on
Yeah.
the scene. He sees Kenny react to seeing Dale, and that's where he gets concerned, and that's where we all knew that it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Was Kenny's reaction where he goes over and then makes that big motion for people to get there even faster to try to help out. That and that was where that quote came from. Is he looks over, sees that, and recognizes that it was really bad.
Yeah.
Was where that quote came from. So yeah, making fun of Daryl for having a genuine emotional response to knowing that one of his friends that he's shared a career in racing with and gotten, we all know, so we're a pretty close tight knit community here in iRacing.
Oh yeah.
It's nothing compared to what those guys who tour and are in the garage every week. They know each other really well. They know their families and stuff like that. So having that genuine emotional reaction to seeing a friend of yours genuinely in trouble.
Yeah. Exactly. And
I just don't. The thing is like it's mean spirited, and I just don't even understand why would you go there to make fun of a guy for that?
right.
It's like you're making fun of someone for being a human being, which I think it's mean spirited or wrong on one level, but it's also just I genuinely do not understand the impulse to mock someone for that.
Yeah, disrespectful. And Zimmy brings up a good point that Dale Jr. he runs on iRacing often, and
Hmm.
he,
Yeah, so you never know who's going to be in there and who's going to see
right.
that stuff. You never know when a member of the Kevin Ward family is going to be racing with you and
Yeah.
see that nonsense that you put on your car.
I know Childress team members drive on here all the time too, and
Hmm.
it's just not cool, guys. Don't be like that, please.
Yeah,
And we're not lecturing you guys. I know everyone that's in here would never do anything like that, but and
I would
here's
hope
another thing
not.
too. The funny thing is, I had heard. See, I didn't know that about you and Sean that you guys were like that, but I had
Hmm.
actually heard from other people that he kind of had an attitude and stuff like that too. So lesson number 2:
He
you can earn a
Yeah,
reputation fast in
got a good
iRacing.
reputation
Yeah.
on top of it, but like I think because of my profile and stuff like that, it is we particularly clashed. And he'll pop in. I haven't banned him from my chat. He'll pop in, and he seems to be good natured about. We actually talked about it a few weeks later when so I don't know if he was getting flack or something like that, but he actually private messaged me on iRacing looking to bury the hatchet, and I told him like, dude, this is what I have a problem with. If you're not going to do that stuff anymore, and if you really want to honestly, sincerely make a change, that's cool. I'm not out here to have beef with I'm not looking to have beef with people. I get on there to have a good time, to relax, and to race. That's what we all get on there for. So I'm not looking to have beef with any one particular person. So
Yeah.
if yeah, the rivalry thing isn't really helping us at all. And I guess we were cool for a little bit, but he still does. He doesn't. I haven't seen him run the Kevin Ward scheme for a while, so I do want to make. He did. I think either he recognized that it was inappropriate, and when it was called, he might have recognized that was too far, that was crossing a line, and pulled that back. I still see him doing the I hope Dale's okay stuff in chat,
Yeah.
and just the other thing, and that like I get it, everyone's got different racing styles. The one thing that I do see with him is that he never gives anyone any room,
Mhm.
and he'll be the first one to complain if there's any contact at all.
Well, the funny thing is, the first
So
ever video I saw of yours, John, was that we were talking a little bit before the podcast here, and you're talking about your most famous video. He is in that video.
and I'm actually defending him in that video.
Yes, you are. And then he comes after you.
Because the guy that I was yelling at, who had just wrecked me, goes in and gets new tires, and then just absolutely ran him over. So I'm actually defending him in that video.
I love that video, but it's one of my all-time favorite videos. If you guys never checked
Seems
it out,
like it's everyone's all-time favorite. That like, it literally like that one's got 37,000 views.
oh man, yeah,
Then I've got one that's at 12, and then everything else. I like all my most viewed videos after that. They're like 2, 1, and then down in the hundreds.
okay.
But that one, for whatever reason, went semi-viral last summer. I was just like, I check the analytics and stuff like that every day just to see what's going on and keep pace and respond to any comments and stuff like that in the channel. And that one just took off for like a month and got tons of new views, and I got a bunch of subscribers from it. So
Yeah.
I had people coming in like, oh, that's the iRacing Fights guy.
Yeah.
So, it was just funny because I've tried to build my, brand, as it were, on respect, on positivity, and stuff like that. And most people's first entry point is me throwing a fit over getting wrecked out of a race.
Well, first of all, it was justified. I watched that and I was like, holy cow. Anywho, so
that seems to be a debatable point, but the like-dislike ratio on that one I think is 85%. So I've definitely had some people who comment who want to curse my name 6 ways from Sunday for reacting the way I did and say that I was completely at fault on that.
well,
Most people seem to be on my side with it.
well, I mean, it's not like you freaked out and started cussing them out either. I remember,
No,
I think all you said was way to jump that restart or something like that. And
oh, well, that
and
was
then-
after I got wrecked.
yeah,
No,
that was all hell broke
he
loose
just-
after
yeah.
that.
I mean, it was very similar actually to the Burrows thing. I think I did bobble a little bit, and he just drove right through me.
Yep. That's actually, speaking of which, that's who did that happen to? Have someone in the league. Anywho, we won't talk about that. But speaking of being respectful and courteous and being kind to other drivers, how many times you wrecked other drivers on purpose, John? By the way,
Not many at all. And like, I know that some people may not believe me. The one where I got Burrows, where he ended up going on and winning the race, so it was fine for him at Bristol. Totally unintentional. I made a mental mistake. I was further off the wall than I thought, and got into him. My second most viewed video is actually really the only time that I've intentionally gotten someone on stream, and it was way back. And I still maintain that it's, and I know people don't believe me on this, it was honestly semi-intentional. It was a National Series race at Thompson, and I think I was in the 1 car, so that was a point. And I've had a few times like this where I'll be real. The pressure gets to you, especially when you have an audience. So I'm feeling the pressure of one in the number 1 car. I haven't gotten to win it, or I haven't gotten to win at Thompson for a really, really long time. I think that Thompson was one of the couple tracks that I won back in 2015. So it was one of the earliest. I wanted to get a win. I had qualified well. I think I was running 2nd or 3rd and was chasing down the leaders. I'm trying really hard to make sure I don't give up any time at all. Working by this lapper who's in like the number 17, or I forget exactly what his number was, but one of the double-digit numbers way back in the pack. And coming off the corner, you know how at Thompson people will kind of like diamond it off?
oh yeah.
And so I'm coming off from the low side up underneath him, and he comes down from the top and hits my front end and comes way, he came way down off the wall. It's just, and looking back, it's like he didn't mean to do any of it. And he actually he messaged back and we talked about it was his first race in the D-class car.
Oh no.
I didn't know. So he's literally just trying to stay out of the way.
Oh no.
But he comes way off the wall, which I remember doing that. I remember when I started out, you think you're way closer to the wall than you actually are from that cockpit view. It takes a long time to get used to how close you have to get to the wall to actually run competitive lap times and to run where the fast guys expect you to run. So, he's doing that, and so he comes down, and I paid the price because I wasn't expecting him to come. I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
I was expecting to get room, and I was trying, to not give up time while I was passing him and keep on the couple guys that I was chasing down for the lead. I spin out, I'm wrecked. I'm mad. I run him back down, and I come up on the straightaway, and I give him a shot just in the straightaway, and then go into the corner. And same deal. I'm going by him on the low side. He's on top. I'm like, okay, I know what he's going to do. He's going to come down off the wall. So I just made sure that when he came down this time, that he paid the price for it instead of me, and made sure that his car got turned instead of mine.
Oh man.
I didn't drive up into him. I went with the same line. He came down off the wall and turned himself. But
Well,
I knew it
technically,
was going to happen. I look, as Michael Waltrip always said, you're responsible for what you do for the front end of my car. I could have lifted. I could have maybe taken a different line. I decided to take that line, knowing that the result would be that he would wreck. But I didn't go out of my way to wreck him. If that
sure,
makes sense.
sure. Yeah, technically that's not protestable thing because if you're holding your line, but you knew it was coming. But
It's borderline.
yeah,
And honestly, if I did something like that now, I guarantee you I'd get suspended for a week. Back then, I had no audience, so I was able to get
Yeah.
away with it.
yeah, yeah. And as you heard John say, he felt bad about it afterwards. The only time I ever
Mm.
intentionally wrecked someone, I felt horrible.
I immediately messaged the guy afterward
Yeah.
to apologize. The next day, I recorded an apology video, which I have linked to the end of that video to make sure that that splash card comes up, so that after that video, it's like, please, and I retitled it like, please. I feel like not my
Yeah.
proudest moment. Go watch the apology. Please go watch the apology video. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, here's the thing about John, guys. I know a lot of you guys think I'm the nicest guy in iRacing, but John definitely has me beat because I most certainly wouldn't have apologized after that. I just would have messaged him privately and been like, "Yep, it's over." So, good on you, John Theodore. Good on you.
I have a conscience. I get a very guilty conscience if I do anything that I feel is unethical, immoral, illegitimate, anything like that. I very much live by the do unto others as you would have them do unto you philosophy.
Now, John, I have heard from other iRacers that you are the guy to talk about racecraft. You want to learn about racecraft and iRacing. You want to talk to John
Really?
Theodore. That's what I've heard. That's what I've
Okay.
heard. That's what I've
All
heard.
right.
Now, obviously, iRacing doesn't condone any type of contact whatsoever in oval racing in iRacing. However, every oval racer knows there's a time and a place to do it, and most of us, if you do it the right way, get us contact or move us out of the way, we're not going to get mad about it. But some do. When is it okay to make contact in iRacing? And I'm more specifically, I guess, the bump and run.
Well, so it's always okay to bump draft someone to help both of you out.
Yep.
So it'll put that one out up front.
Yeah, yeah.
Gosh almighty. Honestly, I have never used the bump and run.
Never?
I've never intentionally moved someone out of the way with my bumper. I race like Mark Martin and Jeff Burton. I always try to make the pass clean. That there have definitely been times I get, and the other thing on that, because I don't use it, I'm not practiced at the way to do it properly
Okay.
without wrecking the guy,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me more hesitant to use it in the rare situations where I'm getting close enough for a spot late in a race where I could even think about using it.
Yep.
So I don't use it. That's not my style. That's not to say that it especially on the oval side and coming out of the short track stuff, that has become considered a legitimate move. It's not the way that I like to win. Because I would know in my heart after completing that race that if a guy checks up, parks the bus or something like that, and does it, and what I would have had to do is really slam on the brakes and possibly spin myself out to avoid it. If that's the situation, then it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And but generally speaking, I'll do everything I can to avoid contact. But there's some of those. But I'm not going to intentionally overdrive my corner to make sure that my bumper hits their car to move them offline to try to get a spot late in a race. I don't do that. And the other thing is that particularly on iRacing, because of the way that the collision boxes work and because of the way that netcode works, where contact can affect your car and the other guy's car in unexpected ways,
Mm-hmm.
I'm overly hesitant about using it, because something that should be a small bump very often isn't, and causes a guy to wreck when you didn't intend that to happen. So for those reasons, I just refrain from using it. And the other thing is that, that there is the pressure of, I do recognize my responsibility of being, while I am shocked, and it still feels weird to hear you say that I have a reputation as being the guy to go to talk to about racecraft stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I do recognize that, because I have an audience, because I am viewed as a role model, that I have a responsibility that is larger than just that one race. What I do is going to be emulated by other people, and they're going to look to that as an example of the way that it should be done. So I'm a little bit extra careful, and I'll be willing. I would much rather ride second than take a win in a way that I'm not going to feel right about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Because when I win, you guys see, I like to celebrate. I like to burn it down. I like to do my Polish victory lap. I would feel like a hypocrite celebrating in that way on a race where I knew that the way that I had won wasn't 100% right.
Yeah. So let's say the shoe's the other foot, John, and you're leading 5 laps to go. We're at Martinsville. Someone puts the bumper into you to push you in too hot, going in the corner, and he gets underneath you. Are you angry at him? Doesn't wreck you, doesn't even cause damage. It's 0x. Are you mad at him?
In that moment, yeah.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And in that case, if they've established that as the rules of engagement, I'm not going to have any problems about giving it back.
There we
I can
go.
get back to
Okay.
their bumper either.
Okay.
But I'm not going to be the one to initiate that, or I'm not going to intentionally initiate that. If I do initiate, if I do cause the contact, I will usually say sorry. I'll usually give them a chance to recover it and try to get the spot back. I have actually, there was one, I think it was the last race when I did the extra live stream last year at South Boston, and understand, like, I had been trying all day to win at South Boston that day. I've never gotten a win at South Boston. That was one of my goals going into that stream, was like, I'm going to do like 12 races at South Boston. I got to win one of them, right? So last race, I had gotten caught up in a wreck early. I think I had run down I was in the number 1 car, and the gap was like 1,000 iRating or something like that. Yeah. So I was running this guy way down, caught him, and then ran into him and turned him around. And I was like, dang it. So I pulled over, stopped, let him back by, and then tried to run him down and get him legitimately, and I didn't, and I ended up running second. I could have taken the win, and I would have felt terrible about it. I felt much better running second and not taking the win that way than I would have if I would have.
Did he say anything to you?
No, I didn't say anything.
What?
I don't even know if the guy had a mic. I don't even know if, honestly, if the guy spoke English. It looked like it.
Oh,
I think it was from this race. Understand, was like at 3 or 4 a.m. It was like 5 a.m. U.S. time, because I had started with the NIS fixed race that starts at like 5 a.m. Central time on Saturday, and I had run that. I had gone and done National Series A fixed, and then I had run the second NIS fixed race, and then I had been alternating between National Series and A fixed like all day long. Get down to the end of that one, and yeah,
exactly, Chris.
I had other wins that day. In a day where I ran A fixed at Texas, 2 NIS fixed at Texas, and a whole bunch of National Series at South Boston. The wins that I got were one of the 2 C fixed races I get at Texas, and my first ever IndyCar race at Daytona.
Oh, wow.
So,
hey, John.
Mm-hmm.
You just recently signed a contract with a little team known as Beast Racing.
I did.
How did that come to fruition? If you guys didn't know this, yeah, John and I are actually teammates now. You know what's funny about this, John? I booked you, Nathan Jurgensen, and Lou Oleski all before I was in Beast Racing, and then now it looks like 3 out of the 6 times I'm just interviewing my teammates.
I know. Well, so that is part of how the Beast Racing deal came together. So I have turned down several different offers to join different teams for a number of different reasons. I like running. I've always been running fixed set stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I, especially as a streamer, I like having the independence to be able to do my own stuff without having to run it through anyone else. I prefer to not have signed non-disclosure agreements where there's stuff that I have to remember not to say when I'm on stream. I prefer not to have to worry about trying to put up a splash screen to cover my setup.
I've already screwed that up, so.
I haven't screwed it up yet, but I have not yet run an open set race with a Beast Racing setup, and I'm gonna wet before I do my first one of those. I am going to have to go and make sure that I get a splash screen created so that I can have something to cover it up. All those things were factors, and with why I wasn't, and the other thing is, as we talked about at the start of the stream, you don't have a lot of time to practice as a streamer because any
Yeah,
time that you're practicing off camera means that you're not streaming on camera,
exactly.
building your audience, getting revenue, working on building the things. So there were a few things. One is I started to realize the flaw in that way of thinking because it was a combination of the championship run that I had last year in the DRL Cup Series, where I didn't win the championship, but I made it to the championship race and finished third. That was a time where I had really consolidated my focus on just making sure that I was going to be good at those tracks. I basically put everything else on the back burner. It's like these tracks, these races, this is what I'm focusing on. And so I was doing a lot more off-camera practice. And what it meant was that my racing content during that time, and also given the folks in the stream a storyline to follow with that season, was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other part of that was I've started watching some videos because I'm always looking at ways to improve the content, but I'd make changes. You guys know this. I'm always looking for ways to improve stuff, but I'm always really slow and deliberate about making any changes. If I'm going to make a change, I want to focus on that one thing, get that one thing right, and then move on to the next thing. I don't want to just add stuff and try stuff ad hoc that doesn't work. So I've been watching the Alpha Gaming channel, Harris Heller's channel on YouTube. He's got a lot of really good tips. And one of the things that he says is if you're just constantly grinding out 3-4 hour streams every day, that's not going to be productive in the long run. One, you are going to burn out. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Two, you're just treading water. You're not actually growing and building your audience. Now, what he recommends, which is something that I still need to work on, is making exclusive content for YouTube, growing on other platforms, and then using those other platforms to redirect back into your audience. That's something that I still need to start doing, and that's probably what it's going to take to really get that next piece where I get up to partner status. Is I need to establish a bigger audience on YouTube and have that funnel back into Twitch. So I've got some ideas on all kinds of different things, from paint tutorials to doing hot lap videos, just different time, and also doing some actual like edits of my races to have better content on the YouTube side that's actually exclusive to YouTube, content that you can't get from watching the live stream. So I need to invest time into that at some point. But the other thing that I realized is that by investing time practicing off camera, even if it's a one-to-one swap, if I say I'm going to stream 5 hours less this week, and I'm going to invest those 5 hours in getting 2.5, just even if it's like do like a 3 hours on whatever A Fixed is running at and 2 hours on whatever the National Series is running at. If I do that dedicated practice time to really learn the track and the car and the setup for that week, the content that I do stream is going to be better. And I'm sure you've noticed this when you're streaming too. Your viewers stick around, and your viewership is going to be a lot better at the end of the race where you were running top 5 and contending for a win.
Oh yeah.
Than it is in a race where you wreck out and you're struggling to hold on to 15th.
Yeah.
You're going to retain viewers throughout the duration of a race.
Yes.
If you're running better.
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen is wrecking out lap 5 in like a 200 lap race, because it's going to be a horrible stream.
And that's why most streamers will just alt F4 out of it.
Yeah.
I tend to stick through. I've got and it's a it's a decision because it's never fun just sitting there and grinding out a race. Although some guys do appreciate seeing what it takes to grind out, and sometimes I'll still grind out a good finish. But if I'm just junked, I've been a lot more.
Cadell.
Yeah. Speaking of that, that's probably the third guy. Me, Aaron Rodgers, and then Jonathan Cadell probably brings a lot of folks in too.
Yes, I forgot
I'd
about
imagine.
the beer swilling guy himself, Mr. Cadell.
But it, so I will quit out just because it's like if you're sitting there with 30 minutes of required repairs, that's just going to be dead air,
Yep.
and it's like I just can't afford to do that on a live stream. There's no way. So but the best way to avoid that stuff is that time spent practicing is actually going to give you better value out of the time that you
Yeah.
stream and race, because you're going to perform better in the races if you've put the time in off stream practicing and learning the track.
Yep, exactly. Well, here's something I've noticed, John, and when I joined up with Beast Racing, and like the things that Beast had to offer were awesome, but I actually had them already being met with another affiliation I had. The only thing they really had for me is, well, we can help you teach you to build setups and we can make you faster. And I was like, that was enough for me because I wanted to up my competition level. And
Right.
since joining Beast, and I'm not bragging on myself, I'm just saying how much this has helped me. In an official race, except for one, this whole month I haven't finished outside the top 5 since
That's
joining up with
really
Beast.
impressive.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Well-
The top 5 I got at Rockingham last night was the first top 5 I've gotten all week.
Well, but you're still doing the fixed stuff though too, like building
I'm doing
setups with the
the
guys,
fixed stuff.
and so it has been awesome to be able to run with those guys, and we're most certainly happy to have you as well. And I can't wait to watch you make the run Road to the Pro next year.
Yeah, and so that was getting back to the reason why I signed on with Beast, and what was different about that versus the other teams that had approached me to that point was, first, Beast had a number of guys that I was already really in close contact with. Mike Seal and I have known each other for basically since 08.
Good dude, mixed strange, right?
He was my boss at like 4 different companies in the video game industry when I was working as a tester. So we've known each other for a real long time. And then Nathan, who I knew through the stream and who had been my spotter on that run that I talked about in Dynasty Racing League last year. And
Yeah.
he was the spotter on most of those races. So we already had real good team chemistry, and I knew those guys really well. And then also the fact that you were on there, and I think I might be forgetting a name, but there were a couple other guys who I knew of on the team. And I had seen Nathan go over there, and we had been talking about, Nathan gone over there, and we were just noticing how that was helping Nathan really up his game and how his trajectory had gone.
Oh yeah.
And that looked really appealing because, again, as we've been talking about, if you run better, that's better content for your stream.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, it's like, I talk about stream the content and stuff like that. I'm competitive. That I feel like is what makes makes my stream good, is that I approached it as a race first and a video game stream second. So while I am constantly thinking about what's going to be good content for my audience, what's my audience going to want to see, I am the first primary thing that I'm focusing on is if I put on a better race, if I perform better as a racing driver, that's the best content for the people who are my fans, who want to see me do well, who are there because they like me, which I would assume there might be a couple folks who hate watch me, but I would assume that most people are there because they're rooting for me, not against me.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just linking up with a team with Beast where it was like I was going to come in and they were going to level me up, rather than it being something where, it was like the team was asking me to come in. The other offers for a number of different, and nothing against those guys, all good dudes. Everyone who has approached me with offers for leagues, for teams, all that stuff, absolutely nothing against them. It's just that when I'm getting, it's one of those deals where I've got myself in a position where I'm getting way more offers than I can fulfill, so I can afford to be choosy.
Right.
Beast was just a good bit. And the idea, especially with the rough start that I've had in league racing this year, it's definitely made me rethink how much time I'm devoting to unofficial leagues as opposed to official racing and the official iRacing career path, because the league content is relevant to my fans and people who are running in those specific leagues.
Right.
Official racing content is relevant to everyone who's on the iRacing service,
Yeah.
because they can all, they can all go and compete in those same things. So, where a league might have 30 or 40 folks, or I think when you're looking at Dynasty, there may be 100 folks associated with that league. When
Yeah.
you're looking at Podium, there are a couple hundred folks that are associated with that. When you're looking at Road to Pro, there are 800 folks who sign up for those sessions. It's relevant to a much wider audience.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And if I'm actually able to make it into the Peak Antifreeze series, and I bring what I think is a little bit better level of production quality and more interaction with my viewers, and am actually be able to be a streamer who's in Peak, that'd be huge
That'd
for
be
me,
cool.
for them. That'd be a really cool thing. So
Yeah.
if I'm actually able to make it, I don't know if that's possible. I honestly
Yeah.
don't know if at 35, if I'm, or which I'm not 35 yet. I'm going to be 35 in May, but in race car driver years, that's pretty old at this point.
Yeah.
So the odds of me actually getting there are probably pretty slim. I don't know. I hope I haven't peaked yet, but I recognize that that's always a reality.
Yeah. One nice thing too,
If I
John.
am able to make it, it would be huge.
Yeah. One nice thing. This is an unexpected, awesome thing about streaming. When you run the open races, there is a lot less wrecking.
Mm,
I haven't been wrecked out of an open
I've
race
heard that.
yet. Yeah.
I've heard that, and
Oh,
so
it's so much better.
I'm definitely, so I've got. I don't know how much I want to talk too much about future plans, but Podium wraps up. I've got the 2 Podium leads; those wrap up in July. And I'm definitely not going to do again what I've been doing for about the past year, where I'm running 3 leagues simultaneously.
That's insane, man.
It's too much. It pulls my focus away from all the official stuff, which again is the stuff that's more relevant to most people. Like I said, I go back and look at the YouTube views. Official races get 2 to 3 times as many views
Yes.
as my VODs for league races. Even the league races where I do really well in, even championship stuff last year in DRL, the NIS fixed races and the A fixed races from that same time period did better.
Yeah.
So, there's that. And when I'm running 3 different leagues that are all at 3 different tracks and in 3 different cars, Podium Elite, the Podium, I'm now running the Cup Series car in both Podium and Dynasty Racing League. But even then, they're never at the same track. So I really cannot do 3 leagues, the official stuff, and practice for everything the way that I really want to do.
That's
in
insane.
order to give it my honest best effort.
Yeah.
So what's most likely going to happen is I'm going to drop down to 1 league that I can focus on doing that right. And I want to get back into actually going for, trying to compete and actually perform well in the standings and some of the official stuff. I want to start doing, doing that seriously, where you actually do some preparatory practice on the Saturday and Sunday before the track switch over. So when the high strength of field races happen on Monday and Tuesday night, I'm actually able to jump in there and go for big points and try to put together a season that way. And same with Road to Pro type stuff. I needed I don't know setup stuff. I've never done it. I have full confidence in my ability to learn it if I were to apply the time, but I knew just from looking on a surface level at Road to Pro, it's like I'm going to be going head to head. In order to actually make it in Road to Pro, I'm going against guys with 7 and 8 KI ratings who have full teams behind them.
Yep.
There is no way that I'm realistically going to be able to compete against those guys trying to do it solo, building my own setups and all that stuff. So I had to get joined up with a team where I could get setups, and learn how to build them, or just have good setups that I could run with
Yep.
and have a team to work with if I was going to be able to make a serious run at it. And that's the other thing. Like, I'm not going to jump into something like that, and that's the reason I didn't do Roto Pro this year. Is I'm not going to jump into it if I don't feel like I can make a serious run at the thing.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely glad to have you. Now we got
Mm-hmm.
to get into something that people know all about you, John. And John is known to get a little political every now and again on his stream,
Every
and
once in a while,
so,
it's important.
some people turns it off. To me, I don't even agree with him on all the stuff, but just the passion he has about it, and you can tell he actually cares about people. I always tell him, just keep talking, John,
Well,
because
so I want to talk first about why I do it, because a lot of people on Twitch will keep that out of their streams, and I understand why.
yeah, myself
Look, people
included usually.
people are coming to a Twitch stream, especially when it's a racing stream or something like that. They've had a hard day, especially in the climate we're at right now. We're bombarded with this stuff
Hmm.
all the time. The way that the news media has become constructed in our country is it makes soap opera style entertainment out of our political process, which
Yes. Yep.
I don't like that it's gone that way. The reason why I do talk about it though, and I have really shifted it so that I try to keep it out of the race videos themselves and really keep it confined to practice when I'm not recording to upload to YouTube, so that we can actually have a little bit of a back and forth about it, and I can focus on I can divert a little bit more attention to that and have it not interfere with the race. Is that I really feel like, one, we live in a unique situation in global human history, that we actually live in a democratic society where we, the people, have a say in how the rules that we're going to live by are crafted and deliberated. That wasn't always the case. Most of human history, the vast majority of humans that have lived on this planet, have lived under monarchs or despots where they had absolutely no say in what the rules were
Hmm.
and how society was going to be structured. So, and the actually taking part in that discussion, participating in that debate, is a crucial piece. If people stop participating in that debate, if the debate shuts down, that only plays into the hands of the rich and powerful, who want to take control back from the people and reserve all of the power for themselves. Our best weapon against that is our speech, is
Hmm.
having discourse among one another and actually having the hard conversations about things that we disagree with, and try our best with our best effort to keep it as respectful as possible. And I understand why it's difficult to keep it respectful, because we're discussing things that are often deeply personal,
Hmm.
that have unlike disputes on track, these have real consequences on people's lives and on society as a whole. So I understand why it gets heated. I understand why it gets, it the the very reason why it gets heated and why it can get unpleasant is exactly why it's important to have those discussions.
Yeah.
Because if we stop talking about it, then we lose our democracy. We shift away from that form of government to something else. Without discussion, voting's obviously important, but voting is the least that is an essential part of democracy, but that is just like the absolute bare minimum of participation. Informing yourself, having the discussions, actually testing your political theories out. That's part of the thing, is that, like, if you read some things, you have some ideas, you don't really know how strong those opinions are or how well those arguments hold up until you actually test them out against someone who has not come to the same conclusions that you have.
Hmm.
So, I do think that that's really important, and that's why even though it does get unpleasant, even though it does drive some viewers away, it's more important to me to maintain that freedom to have those discussions and get involved in those debates and talk about the issues of the day, than it is to have more viewers, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I just would like to remind everyone, the views that John and I expressed tonight are in no way, shape, or form Beast Racing's views. They're purely mine and his. So
Right.
here, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I've noticed you're kind of a more kind of a throwback Democrat, if that's fair. I've heard you be anti-war, which I was like,
Yes.
yes, go get him, John.
Which that's actually so that actually goes back to my the core of when I was born. Not many people know this about. I've talked about it a little bit more because I've actually gone back to my roots in a sense. But I was actually born Quaker
Oh, no
Friend,
way.
the Quaker Friends Society, absolutely,
No way.
which is very much they actually, because of their how their strict anti-war stance, are one of the few religious organizations where you can
Yes.
actually claim conscientious objector status
Yeah.
because they have a very strict doctrine of nonviolence.
That's so cool. Richard Foster, who is one of the Friends Quakers, I absolutely love his stuff.
Yeah,
So-
man. There's a lot of good stuff there, and again, like it fits really well. And this is why I went back. Is that I've been, as we all do, I've been going through my own spiritual journey and thinking about, stuff that and how it relates. And I realized that, after 20 years of not being an active participating member of the Friends meeting, I was still connected through Facebook and having a lot of the people that I consider to be my closest friends and the people that I would most align with philosophically were connections that I still had from when I was active and participating in the Friends Society. And I was feeling a need for spiritual ground. And the other thing is that, while I do consider myself a Christian and I believe in a lot of the principles and teachings of Christ and stuff like that, I am definitely turned off by the way that Christianity, I guess the best way to describe the way that Christianity gets weaponized against non-Christians and against people who don't subscribe to a particular conservative type of Christianity.
Yeah, like
So-
mainline Republican Christianity, namely.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, but there's that's obviously a big part of it. Obviously, as a liberal progressive, I do not agree with philosophically, and that was why I walked away from the Greek Orthodox Church. Was when my priest told his congregation to vote for George W. Bush.
Oh gosh, are you serious? Oh
It
my.
wasn't. It honestly shouldn't have been as much of a surprise to me as it was, but at the time I was young and naive, and
wow.
I didn't think that he would do that. And when he did, I was like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah,
Out.
that's weird. That's weird.
I was out and look, understanding where that particular church is and where and my folks had after that had numerous talks with me about like, yeah, we know he's conservative, but at least he'll have a conversation with you about it. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's not me. Separation of church and state for me is a big deal.
Yeah.
You can't I just really had now there are certain situations where I think that there might be an appropriate time for the priest in advising his congregation to articulate what they feel like is the morally correct political position to hold on a particular issue.
Yeah.
But when you're telling your congregation that you should be voting for
A person.
a president
Yeah.
who is arguing for an illegal war against a country that has not attacked us,
Yeah.
and arguing for the killing of many, 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 many innocent people, which is the ultimate consequence. It does not matter
Yes.
what war you get into.
Yeah.
Innocent civilians are going to be casualties. You're going to kill a lot of people, even if you win, even if you run the best, cleanest military campaign possible. Innocent civilians who have nothing to do with the conflict are still going to be killed as a result of it.
Yeah.
To say that guy who is arguing for that, and again, like this was at the time where I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was actually pre 9/11, but it was in the election leading up to. He was arguing for war in Iraq prior to that.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And to use as the justification for voting for the militant president who is going to also do all these horrible things that the Republican Party does in terms of the way that they structure taxation and attack things that benefit poor families who have very little and are trying to scrape by on very little, taking away their social safety net to give tax cuts to rich people, which is something that
Yeah.
Jesus would never argue for. Like, that has become part of the Christian doctrine. Is I have no idea how that's gotten in there.
Yeah.
Specific, like the reason, the justification was because George W. Bush was against abortion and against gay marriage,
Yep.
and that was apparently the church's position, and that was the justification that he used to argue for the guy that was going to start wars, was going to impose more economic strife on people already facing a lot of economic struggle, and was going to do harm to the environment, our planet, our host, the two great gifts that God gave us, if you're a Christian, are life and a home.
Yeah.
And what we have done to that home, to me as a Christian, is appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand, like, when we were going through the industrial age, when we were at a period of greater ignorance where we didn't know the damage that our that our advancement of technologies were doing to the planet, somewhat excusable,
Mm-hmm.
or at least understandable. Excusable is the wrong word, but it's understandable why the march of human progress, as we're trying to make things better and adapt our world, that's something that humans have done. And throughout human history, we had been able to, part of the reason that we rose as the dominant species on this planet was our ability to adapt our environment to suit us, as opposed to adapting ourselves to suit our environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when we hit the industrial age and started doing that adaptation on such a mass scale, now looking back with greater knowledge about what we have, about the ramifications, about what we're doing through all, really, especially when it specifically comes down to the atmosphere, we are simultaneously adding more carbon to the atmosphere while taking away the forests that are the main thing that pulls that carbon back out. So we're putting more in while also removing the filtration system. And, actually the oceans are an even bigger absorber of that carbon. But the reason that the oceans absorb so much of that carbon is because the oceans are alive and thriving. The amount of pollution and plastics and things like that we're putting into the ocean, and oils and things that just spill into the waterways, are killing that ocean life. So the oceans are dying as well, which means that they're going to be less effective at filtering out the carbon that we're putting into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So again, somewhat understandable that in our ignorance, hey Rachel, how's it going? I'm reading chat, guys. I'm waiting for Randy to prompt me though on questions, because he says that those are coming at the end. So the lost my train of thought. So but yeah, so it was somewhat understandable when we knew not what we were doing. Now we know the damage that we're doing. To continue to, again, as a Christian, to continue to advocate for those destructive policies, or to promote someone who is pushing those destructive policies because they're in league with the very people who are making money off of continuing to add pollution, and the justification for that is... Hi, Spike. I've been seeing you in there, man. The justification for that is going to be, well, because this guy is going to prevent gay people from getting married, and is going to be, under the guise of being the party of individual freedom, is going to go drive big government directly into the middle of the relationship between women and their doctors.
Yeah. Well,
I don't understand how that can possibly be the Christian position.
So to shed a little light on where I come from, John, you might not have known about this about me, but did you know I'm actually a Protestant senior pastor at a church? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I am. And so actually the funny thing is I agree with a lot of what you had to say there. And I've been kind of frustrated with, Christians latching on to sometimes holding like Republican political ideas even more so than, let's say, their Bibles. And sometimes like, hey, cut that out. Get your eyes
Right.
back on Jesus and do things like that. But yeah, I completely agree, and I made a lot of friends mad because with friends I'll openly criticize Bush and how I'm not a fan about him, and there does seem to be a slant to a political party with the modern Christians. So and
Yeah. So where do you think that comes from? Why do you think that specifically in religious circles in America, why do you think that they have gravitated towards the Republican Party, which seems to have so many views that we
yeah,
both seem to agree are in direct contradiction to what Christ was actually teaching about in terms of how we should treat other people and
yeah,
how we should all how again environmentalism wasn't really a concern at the time, but I think it's relatively it's not a real big leap to extrapolate out that given that the planet was also a gift from God, that we should be good. And I think there are passages that talked about being good caretakers of the earth and of our home. But so
yeah. I think the abortion issue
where do you
back in
think
the
that comes from?
'70s is really what pushed a lot of Christians towards that. But if you look at it though, Christians are less and less Republican now though. They're slowly going back towards the even. I mean, like 10 years ago when Bush was in office, it was like if you were a conservative Christian, meaning conservative in like ideology, even in like the scriptures, you were Republican. As to where now, like
Right.
even me, I would consider myself a pastor of a quote unquote conservative church, but I'm
Hmm.
libertarian, and all my Republican friends thinks I'm a flaming liberal, and all my liberal friends thinks I'm a some
Right.
old time
So
GOP guy.
my thing with libertarianism is that libertarians present them as being socially liberal on social issues and conservative on economic
Yeah,
policies.
yeah,
And I just think that those two are incompatible with one another in a capitalist society. You cannot have social justice without economic justice. You can't separate those two. You have to have in an economic society, if you're truly going to have social justice and have all people live with equality of opportunity and the ability to have equal access to things and not have systemic oppression,
sure,
you have to level the playing field economically because that is the way economic money is the way in a capitalist society that every single thing is accessible to you. Our healthcare is accessible via money. Our food is accessible via money. You need money for housing. You need housing, education, everything. All of the different gateways and pathways that you have to living a better life ultimately funnel through money. So if you're not addressing the issues of economic injustice through um and again, like, I understand the idea of trying to address it through the private sector with
hmm,
charities, but the reality is that that's the reason why I don't think that that's adequate is that that's not an organized, planned out way. People just giving to whatever charity they think is right. Well, who knows? If there's this one charity that's addressing this one need, but they're getting too much funding and these other 10 issues aren't getting the appropriate. That's what we have. That's why we have a government. That's why we have a government that runs the society, is that is the organized and structural way that we determine how the money is going to get dispersed,
yeah.
right?
Well, see, I
and
would,
then and that's why the democratic process is so important, is because we the people have a direct say in how that money is getting spent. That's what the
hmm,
discussion is about. That's what the voting's about. So I understand and am completely sympathetic to the idea of big government having too much control in our personal lives,
hmm,
which is why I'm personally against having the government weigh in on the abortion issue, is because you cannot do that without having a direct invasion of a very personal decision by the government. I absolutely want there to be less abortions in our country. The outlawing abortion statistically has not been shown to be effective in actually reducing the number of abortions. What it does do is it increases the risk to the mother when she seeks an abortion. It makes it more likely that she is going to suffer, that she is either going to become sterile or dead as a result of terminating a pregnancy that she knows that she is either not physically capable of being able to carry to term because of health issues,
Yeah.
not emotionally capable of being able to carry to term because of who the father was, whether it was her rapist or someone who abused her, or if she is not going to be economically capable of carrying the pregnancy to term and taking care of that child because she's either too young or too poor. So, given that the reasons why no one just has an abortion willy-nilly. The reason that people have abortions, it's always a deeply personal reason. It's always conflicted. And that decision, in my opinion, is always between them, their family, and their doctor. And the government shouldn't have any say in it one way or the other.
Sure. So if
As someone who wants less abortions, the ways that have been shown, again, through statistics, to be effective in actually reducing the number of abortions that you have in a society, better sex education, and an increased emphasis on teaching young people in particular about proper methods of birth control. Knowing how and when to use a condom, which is all the time, and making sure that women have access to birth control. And now they're actually coming out, apparently, they're still in testing, but they've got some pills that will reduce the sperm count in a guy without reducing his libido.
yeah.
So, those things. Understand that you cannot you can't do thought control on people. You're not going to control people just through abstinence only education and just, we're human beings. We're going to have sex. It's going
Sure.
to happen. But if you teach people how to do so in a way that is much less likely to result in a pregnancy and reducing unwanted pregnancies, by definition, if you reduce unwanted pregnancies, you're going to reduce abortions. That's actually the effective way. And I think that talking about it in those ways is where we can actually, hopefully, I would think, have a union between the left and the right in this issue, because, again, we don't want government interference. We don't want big government interference coming in and getting into our personal lives. And there is no more personal way because, again, if you're
Yeah.
going to have laws that outlaw abortion, first and foremost, you have to have the government in that room where the ultrasound is taking place inside of that woman's body to know that she has a pregnancy in the first place, especially when we're talking about early term abortions where it's just a bundle of cells.
These guys are going
So
crazy in the chat.
I'm sure.
so
Um,
so where
you
I'm
know,
coming from
so
in that, John. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been talking a lot. Yeah.
No, that's okay. And I'm glad that you and I can do this discussion because John's a cool guy. I'll be super cool about it too. But see, from my standpoint, by the way, how do you, just really quick, just say you're for or against it? What about these now where they're saying after the baby is born abortion things? Have you seen that? That's been being
It's not
advocated
real.
for.
That's
Not real?
that is so that is a thing where look.
Okay, wait. We'll
And
get to
again,
that next. Let's get to that next.
okay. Well,
Okay.
since you brought it up, I do want to address that. So, and again, why I'm very much, you call me an old school Democrat, which I agree with,
Yeah.
anti-war,
Yeah.
pro-labor, which the Democratic Party walked away from back in the Clinton years and stuff, and even back in the 70s and 60s. I'm a Bernie guy. I think that we need a party that's advocating for workers' rights. We need a party that's got a strong anti-war stance, because right now both Democratic and Republican parties are very much pro-business owner and very much pro-war.
Pro war for sure. Yeah. Yep.
So but what we saw recently is that Bernie Sanders, my guy, actually he's my 1A right now. I'm a big Bernie guy, but I've always been a big Elizabeth Warren fan. She's actually my top choice right now. But I'm going to go with whichever of those two candidates is riding the hot hand when it comes down to decision time. So, the government, so USA Firearms, Democratic Party turned way before Carter, man. Lyndon B. Johnson, even Kennedy are very much a departure from the FDR style of Democrats. So it wasn't just Carter. We tried a brief return with McGovern. I've been studying this stuff since I got more into the Bernie campaign. We can go into that my own political discovery journey, but Bernie was able to go into the Lion's Den on Fox News, and in an environment where the framing of every single question was designed to try to trap him into saying certain kind of gotcha things or trip him up and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And he ultimately handled
Typical mainstream news.
right. Well, yeah, no, it would look. There's definitely slants, and obviously, look. I will say
Whoops, I didn't mean to do this to you.
the role of a journalist is to aggressively question and try to get towards the truth, right? So there's a difference between framing things towards a political agenda with the line of questioning and holding candidates accountable with correct follow-up
Yeah.
questions to make sure that you nail them down on the actual core, getting through the talking points to the actual core of their things. I think it's completely fair that they asked Bernie Sanders how he's going to pay for Medicare for all, how he's going to pay for making public colleges tuition free. Now, it's well documented, and if you go to his website and if the journalist would just do a little bit of research and go to his website, he has those policy positions laid out. Now you can have a discussion about whether or not you think that those numbers add up, but he definitely says how he's going to pay for it. You never hear them, though, ask the same questions of how is Donald Trump going to pay for the tax cuts that they did, the $2 trillion tax cuts that they just did that primarily went to the top 1%. You never hear him ask for how they're going to pay for the Iraq war, the war in Afghanistan, Syrian war, the war in Jordan, Libya, all of these different military conflicts. You never hear him ask politicians a question of how they're going to pay for those when they're talking about those. So I'm fine, and I actually think it's completely appropriate to ask Bernie how he's going to pay for his plans. But they should be asking that question of every single politician that they interview. So again, now there is a difference, in my opinion, between good aggressive journalism driving at the truth and what Brett Baer and Martha McCullum were doing in the Bernie Sanders town hall. That was a different kind of thing. And where this ties back to what I'm saying is Bernie is very experienced at this point in answering difficult questions, because unless he goes on to a truly progressive platform like the Young Turks or Kyle Kalinski's show or something like that, CNN, MSNBC, they're going to be attacking him in the same way that Fox News was attacking him. He's going to be so he's become very experienced on it, and he genuinely believes in this stuff. He's well researched on it, and he's genuine on it. It's not just talking points for him. This is and this is why folks like me really like him, is because I see for the first time a politician who is in my line of thinking, who he's been advocating for this stuff for 20 or 30 years when it wasn't a politically expedient position to hold. He has held these positions when it was not popular, when it was not polling at 60 and 70% nationally. He advocates for these things because he genuinely believes that this is the right direction for the country to go in. So he's able to field those questions correctly. Now, where the thing that you brought up about the post-birth abortions, that was Democrats who are not as well versed in handling gotcha questions, getting tripped up and answering incorrectly and making it seem like there is something going on that is actually not happening. The reality is
oh my gosh.
and I'm just going to ignore that. The reality is that what's going on, and it's this again, when I say that this stuff is deeply personal, and the reason that the government shouldn't be involved in these is that these are deeply personal things. We're talking about mothers who have carried their pregnancy to term, and tragically the baby is born with extremely severe physical defects that 5 or 10 years ago would have meant that the baby was effectively stillborn with no chance of life. And what is going on is that after attempting to resuscitate the baby, the parents are put to the position of, do we keep this child on life support with no help of them ever having anything resembling a normal life? They're going to live in extreme pain and then die 3 to 6 months later, or should we take them off life support? That is the question that's being happened, and that is what is being framed as post-birth abortion. I think you and I would both agree that the scenario that I just described is not post-birth, is not accurately described as post-birth abortion, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, I'd agree.
So that's the thing, is that there are no healthy babies being born in America who are being killed after the mother says, "Nope, now I've decided I don't want it." There are zero cases that does not happen. And I would absolutely be against with that. I would no one
It's
on the
okay,
left
Chris.
would be in favor. No one on the left would be in favor of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only reason why people had jumped on it is because in the bill it is stated that doctors could not be no longer prosecuted for aborting a baby after birth, and it didn't really specify. And could you imagine politicians would do a thing like this? It
But
didn't
again,
specify those situations. It just said no
but it
longer could a
it's
doctor.
it's but that's because it is being left up. What the actual language in the bill is, it is left up to the doctor to make the
Yeah.
medical determination on whether or not this is a viable birth. I think is what the actual language is.
That is fair enough then. That is most certainly
Yeah,
fair enough then.
and again, look, Ralph Northam's an idiot. He is. No one on the Democratic
We'll
Party
just
is a fan of
we'll just
is a
put
fan
the
of the guy.
babies back in the incubators and we'll let the mothers decide.
Look, there is no one on the left right now that is a fan of the guy that took high school photos in blackface.
Oh,
Or,
jeez,
well,
poor guy.
we still don't know. Apparently he can't remember whether he was the guy in blackface or if he was the guy in the KKK
Yeah.
hood. But no one on our side is a
Oh, he
fan
said
of
he
the
can't
guy
remember
who
which
thought
one he
that was
is.
a funny thing to do in high school.
I guess it's kind of irrelevant then, isn't it? Which
And
one it was?
You know, like before, because I'm sure that some of the online trolls and stuff. I promise you, you go back through my high school yearbook, you will find zero pictures of me in either of those outfits, thinking that that was a funny or cool thing to do.
Go look it up, guys.
You will also find zero yearbook entries that are talking about what was it in Kavanaugh's boofing or being part of some girls, like being part of some girls club where me and my
Excuse me.
like you won't find any entries like that either.
Yeah, you say that now, but they're looking.
Good luck. I honestly can't even find my year, but like I actually talk of parents like, look, because I wanted to like post them like, look, this is how boring my yearbook is in comparison
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
having stuff like.
So let me clarify
yeah.
my position there on abortion there real quick, because I do agree that government does not belong in people's bodies whatsoever. I agree with that so much. I think parents should be able to decide whether or not they vaccinate their kids. And I guess that's one of my beefs with the left is they're trying to push forced vaccination.
Let's put a button on that because I do want to come back to that.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. But
Okay.
see, from my point of view, that body that's inside that woman, that body doesn't belong to her. Just like your body doesn't belong to your mother's body. And so, to me, from my eyes, I even view it as murder. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the people who are doing abortions, they don't know any better, and I'm not going to go up to them and throw blood on them and make fun of them and things like that. But to me, I do want very restricted government. But it is here for three things that we know about that: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And that third one's really debatable, especially between,
But
right and left.
understand though, like, and this is the thing, that is a religious belief. It's a religious belief that I actually happen to have some agreement with you on.
Yeah.
But that's a religious belief, not a legal definition. Legally, you are not a citizen. You do not have protections under U.S. law until you are born. That's why you gain U.S. citizenship at birth, not at conception.
Yeah.
Right? You don't gain U.S. citizenship if you're here on vacation. If your parents were here on vacation for a week, had sex in a hotel room, and you were conceived at that point, and then born somewhere else. No, you actually have to be born on U.S. soil to gain U.S. citizenship and to gain protections under the U.S. government. So I understand your argument from a religious perspective, but if we're going to make that the standard of U.S. law, then we have to make some other radical changes to where we define citizenship. And I'm
We're,
not
we're not
entirely
talking necessarily citizenship. What about life?
no. We're talking about citizenship rights. If you're going to have protections under U.S. law,
Oh, yeah,
you
did
need to
like that.
grant citizenship rights at that point as well. You need to grant legal status to be protected. If we're going to call abortion murder, then we also have to extend protections under the law, and it is done in some cases. You can be there are cases, and again, but
You
this
know,
is
like double
we're
murders
finding
and
the
stuff
difference.
like that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. The difference between wanted and unwanted pregnancy, and this does get into sticky moral areas. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. But if we're talking about providing legal protection, I'm not entirely sure that these same people who want to, and I'm not sure where you fall on this, but a lot of the people who are really taking a hardline stance on this abortion issue and saying that at the moment of conception we should start considering that collection of 4 cells a human being at that point, and if it is aborted on with a morning after pill, then we are going to charge the woman who took that pill with murder.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
not entirely sure that those people are ready to extend citizenship rights to every single child whose mother came across the U.S. border either legally or illegally
Sure.
at any point during the pregnancy.
Yeah. I mean,
If
I
you're going
think.
to start granting citizenship rights there, then and legal protections, then you have to go in. Then you have to really, if again, in order to make that a constitutionally viable position, you have to change what the Constitution says about how you become a U.S.
Well,
citizen and gain protection under U.S.
yeah.
law.
Well, I think even if you're U.S. citizens and you're overseas and you have a child, that child would then be considered a U.S. citizen as well. Correct?
Yes, because you were born to two.
Yeah.
You were
Okay.
born. You just like so. Barack Obama was born on U.S. soil, but he was also born to his
Excuse
mother was
me.
a U.S. citizen.
Excuse me. No, I'm totally just kidding.
Yeah, he was born in Hawaii.
I was joking about that.
But
That
he
was
was
a big
also
deal. Remember that?
but Ted Cruz was not. But Ted Cruz can run for president because I believe it's his mother is if you there are 2 ways that you can become a natural born U.S. citizen. One is you can be born on U.S. soil, and two is that you can be born to U.S. citizens, whether or not you're on U.S.
Mm-hmm.
soil.
Mm-hmm.
Either of those scenarios will make you a natural born U.S. citizen who has eligibility to become president.
Sure.
Everyone else who becomes a naturalized citizen after birth has the ability to hold any other government office other than the presidency.
Sure. But you'd have to agree though, if it has a heartbeat, eyes, hands, feet, mouth, you could neural activity in the brain. You wouldn't call that life.
Neural activity in the brain's getting further, but again, when we're talking about scientifically relevant issues, I defer to the scientists. Scientists have shown with a collection of cells they can manufacture something that looks like a heartbeat. That does not mean that it's a viable
Sure.
pregnancy. Neural
Sure.
activity in the brain doesn't mean it's a viable pregnancy. Again, when we're talking about the abortions, generally speaking, when we're talking about these different pregnancies, at 6 weeks, okay, and this was I was watching this. I think it was on TYT where they were talking about this. One of the women on the panel brought a really relevant point. 6 weeks is literally you're 2 weeks late on your period. Any of us who have had a girlfriend for any length of time, or any of the women watching this, knows that a period is not a regular schedule like a clock for any women. You can be 2 weeks late. You can be 3 weeks late sometimes, and it doesn't mean anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at 6 weeks, you're 2 weeks late on your period.
Spike.
So we're talking about that decision where you may or may not know if you're pregnant. You may not even have any idea, because there are scenarios where you think, and again, that part of this goes back to the education.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that pulling out is a viable means of birth control, you may think that you may have no reason to believe that you're pregnant, because you thought that that pulling out
Sure.
meant that no, there's no way that I could possibly be pregnant.
Sure. But that would.
And you don't know until 8 weeks later when you're you're already heading towards the second term before you even have an idea that you might be pregnant, right? You're not
Yeah.
showing.
Yeah.
You're not. There's nothing indicating other than the fact that your period's late that you might be pregnant.
Sure.
Saying that, and again, that can be 14, 15 years old, saying that that young woman now has to carry that pregnancy all the way to term. I'm not so sure that I'm comfortable with
Well, you're
that.
saying she didn't.
Now,
Go ahead. Sorry.
now, if we're talking later on in the pregnancy, generally what we're talking about with late term abortions are not cases where the woman's been raped or not cases where the woman just didn't know. Generally speaking, at that point, the woman knows and she has decided to continue with the pregnancy. She wants to have the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're usually into scenarios where the decision to abort the pregnancy at that point either means, again, like we talked about earlier, there are severe fetal abnormalities that would make this an unviable pregnancy, which you can have even if you have a heartbeat, even if you have limbs, and even if you have brain activity. There are a lot of conditions that people in the medical profession know a whole lot more about than you and I do.
Sure.
That are very rare. Again, like pregnancy termination after the second term is almost unheard of. Generally speaking, we're talking, most abortions happen in that 6 week to 8 week range. Very few happen past that point, and it's only an extreme, like we're talking, things that probably happen in 1 out of 1,000 pregnancies, 1 out of 10,000 pregnancies. Extremely rare conditions that are very emotionally difficult for the family and because they were preparing. They've been probably having baby showers or planning baby showers and getting things. They're looking to welcome a new member of their family in, and then they tragically find out from the doctor that this is not going to be the child that you thought you were going to have. This is going to be a child that may not even survive birth, or if they do, is going to be condemned to a life of probably less than a year in extreme pain. They're going to know that they're in extreme pain, but they're not going to go much else, and then they're going to die.
Sure.
Or the other scenario is the pregnancy might be healthy, but there is a risk to the mother. And again, I don't want the federal government stepping in and saying, nope, the mother's life matters not at all. You're having that baby, even if it means that you're going to die.
Oh well, sure. I think we would all agree on that. If a choice has to be made.
We don't all agree with that. You and I agree on that, maybe.
Yeah.
But we don't all agree on that. The Republican politicians who are pushing these bills right now, some of them do consider the health of the mother, but it's only in very extreme cases, and they want to put a government restriction in on exactly what the level of risk is to the mother. Others don't. There are other bills out there where they do not want to consider the health of the mother at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't all agree on this. You and I might agree on this, but we do not all agree on this.
Okay, I understand. I wouldn't even agree with maybe even the, because a lot of times even when it comes to like the health of the child, there's been a lot of cases where they've been wrong about it. This is anecdotal.
They can be wrong.
And I apologize about this because it is anecdotal. But my sister, she was going to have a kid. She did have a kid. But they told her in about 3 months, well, she's going to have Down syndrome. She's not going to have a good quality of life. We recommend abortion. And actually, they got uppity about it. Like, you need to abort this child. She's like, no, I'm going to do it. And here she is today, completely healthy. And
in the cases of Down syndrome, I agree with you. And there's a very emotional video. The young man with Down syndrome.
Oh, that was amazing. Yeah,
that was look, and I'm completely on his side. I agree with you on that.
Okay,
case.
Yeah.
But I still don't net like I think that there should be better counsel on that. And look, maybe there are some specific tweaks where we can say, look, no, if you're determined, but the reality is that the technology of this is evolving in all kinds of different ways. But no, I agree with you that Down syndrome is not learning that the child is going to have Down syndrome is not justifiable is not a
Oh, okay.
justifiable reason to abort the baby.
Well, even on this, we're closer than we thought.
I'm talking about cases where it's not like gray area, like we think in 3 months that the child might develop Down syndrome. No, it's like this kid's going to be born with, I don't know, with no cerebrum.
Yeah.
Like this child is going to be
Gotcha.
born
Okay, I understand that. Yeah.
without aorta, like like literally, like we're talking extremely
Okay.
severe. Like it's not going to make it through its first year.
Well,
of
I
life.
think we're on common ground there, then, and even in there, I guess
Yeah.
we agree more than we disagree on
Right.
that.
So, and that's the thing is that again, because we're doing a better job in having a detailed discussion about the nuance of this than I've ever seen on cable news, because they literally just want to put people who are going to shout at each other and throw
Right.
talking points. Like, and that's the thing is that
And we're just iRacing guys.
but we are being, look, there is, and this is the reason why fascists are able to gain power, is that there are always shreds of truth in the lies that they're telling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Donald Trump has been extremely successful in attacking our news media as the quote unquote fake news, right? And his, like, those attacks against CNN, against MSNBC, against the quote unquote failing New York Times, against the Washington Post, those have landed very well with a significant part of the electorate.
Even neutral people, by the way.
Well, but the reason that they've landed is because we all recognize that the Fifth Estate has been letting us down. They have a very clearly defined role to play in a functioning democracy, and they have been letting us down in that.
Yeah.
But again, I got to be really clear on this specific point. They have been letting us down because it's profitable, and the reason that it's profitable is that we, the people,
Exactly.
have been telling them through Nielsen ratings and through subscriptions and through publications that we don't actually want real journalism. We want garbage and fluff. So if we are telling them by watching it, and so by giving the New York Times greater circulation when they publish those fluff pieces, instead of giving it to The Intercept that is actually doing hard-hitting journalism pieces about our involvement in the Iraq War and about our involvement in Afghanistan. We're giving much more credence to stuff that does the mythological and look, there are probably some great stories of heroism that have come out of these wars, as there are out of every war. But if you're only telling that side of the story, what you're doing is military propaganda. If you're not telling the other side of what's been going on, like what was exposed, through WikiLeaks back when, WikiLeaks was doing things, I think, much more in the public interest rather than having a political slant to what they were doing.
Oh man, I wish we could talk about that. Not enough time though.
Yeah. So well, we got all the time we want. I mean, I'm planning on doing racing after this, but the exposing what happened in I think it was Abu Ghraib what our soldiers were doing to the prisoners there.
People forgot WikiLeaks broke that story. That was a big deal.
That story, they broke the chopper gunner story. And again, all of those leaks that WikiLeaks broke, all of those stories that they broke were because of the information. Exactly. That wasn't the stuff Snowden released. That was the stuff that Chelsea Manning released.
Yes, and I know she's gotten a little crazy now, but I think she's a hero, and I was glad she was released.
I think she's a hero too. Look, I really don't blame her or Assange for going a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
They have been put through an experience that none of us can comprehend. I was in jail for a 24-hour hold.
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
I started going a little screwy. Like that was just in.
Well, they tortured her. They had to have.
Of course, they tortured her.
Yeah.
And Julian Assange has basically been in solitary confinement for 5 years.
So horrible.
In the Ecuadorian, in his room in the Ecuadorian embassy. Obviously a little bit of social, and it's not completely solitary, but he's basically been serving a self-imposed 5-year sentence, avoiding prosecution.
Yeah.
My just since I brought it up, mine was protesting police violence here locally in St. Louis. The peaceful protest. They arrested us. They held us 24 hours. They
Wait,
denied
what'd
us
you do?
access to lawyer.
They just arrested you, huh?
I was literally it was a protest in a mall. So we did our protest in the mall. It was wrapping up. Police blew a whistle and charged us.
Oh,
And
dang it. Why'd you do it?
Slammed me against the wall, and
Did they say
like, my mother
trespass?
was standing right next to me. So the charges that they were initially going to throw at us, which have all been dropped, were rioting, failure to disperse, and trespassing.
Oh, geez. They tried to hit you with all that, huh?
Mm-hmm. Of course, look, that's, you want to talk about police state, you want to talk about big government and
Oh, yeah.
and oppression and freedom of speech rights.
Let's go into this, John.
We're living in that country, man. We're
let's
living
go
in
into
the
this
country where that does, but it's definitely used more, I think, against left-wing activists than it is against right-wing activists.
Right now, absolutely. Let's talk about this a little bit, because I think this is another place where you and I can find some common ground.
Okay.
Because libertarians are absolutely against this police state that's going on. We would most certainly agree that a lot of black people are being killed, but
Right.
we would tack onto that a lot of people are being killed by police. Period.
Absolutely. No, there are white people who are abused by the police too, and then
Yeah.
like I will also be the first to say, out of all the people who were arrested, even in my specific case, I had the least amount of grievance
Yeah.
to
I couldn't even imagine what you
I
did.
had it the easiest, and it wasn't fun.
Could you imagine John holding his steering wheel, putting his hands behind his back?
They did cuff me improperly, and then they did, so they put the cuffs on wrong to where it was like they used those plastic zip tie cuffs, and they, first off, like, I know I'm a big guy, but did they need 3 of them? Like, it was like, so what happened, what I remember happening is, the police had, first off, they had formed a line blocking us off from the rest of the mall, the riot shields and stuff up there, and they had one guy go up who apparently didn't know how to use a megaphone. Like, I think I may have heard the word disperse, but again, you got to understand, like, the way that the rules of engagement have been laid out. I'd been, at this point, this was, I don't know if you remember the Jason Stockley case.
Oh, yeah.
This was the one that happened here in St. Louis where the officer had been, like, so they set up a fake deal to try to get this guy. He gets in his car and he runs. During the pursuit, inside the car, you can hear Stockley say, we're going to kill this MFer.
Oh.
Yeah. The guy that they're chasing, I get his name. It's really bad because part of the thing is that I want to always remember the name. So give me a second. I'm going to look up the victim's name here.
Yeah.
But he crashes his car. Anthony Lamar Smith.
Yeah.
Stockley gets out, runs right over, and shoots him.
Yeah.
Boom. Nothing. Returns to his vehicle, comes back, and then all of a sudden, after going back to the police people, all of a sudden he found a weapon inside.
Yeah.
Did he plant the weapon? Did he not? We don't know.
Well,
we know that there have been a number of cases where the evidence, where it's absolutely clear, where we've seen video evidence of police dropping them.
Oh, yeah.
And planting a weapon, or dropping and planting evidence.
Yep.
So there is at least plausible reason to suspect that in this case that he may have planted the weapon. But even if he didn't, there's no justification on that video for shooting the guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
At no point is there a weapon raised. There was no attempt made to apprehend him in a peaceful manner. And look, I'll absolutely look. Shouldn't be dealing drugs, especially heroin.
Mm-hmm.
You should not run from the police. Although, given the current climate, I will say I absolutely understand why specifically young black men feel the choose to do that, because we have seen time and again where they do not get a fair shake, where it is a life or death thing for them, where they really are fleeing for their lives.
Yeah.
So in that context, I understand why a young black man in an encounter with the police is going to respond with a heightened sense of fear than you or I might, because they do not have the same expectation of fair treatment by that officer that you or I would.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Whether you
So
agree
I
or not,
understand. Now,
in their mind, they believe it to be 100%
again,
true, so
given
they're
all
scared.
that, I understand why dealing heroin is illegal. I don't think the war on drugs has been acceptable, but I understand that is an illegal, like that what they were trying to set them up for. I understand that was, even if it was an entrapment, which his family, I think, has claimed that I understand that. I understand that running from the cops in the way that he did, that there was going to be consequences for that. Nothing that he did is the punishment for that death.
Mm-hmm.
He did not commit a capital offense at any point through there, right?
Right.
He deserved, at bare minimum, a fair trial.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's why I was out protesting, was that after the verdict came down that Stockley was acquitted on all charges, I felt like if there is any point where we the people need to take to the streets, this is that moment, right?
Yeah.
This is why we reserve the right to protest.
Yeah.
And, there's a difference between a non-violent protest and a peaceful protest. We were look, if they would have charged me with disturbing the peace, I probably would have said, yeah, that's fair. That was our intent. That was our stated mission. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the point of a protest, dude. We're going to disturb some peace. We are going to make it uncomfortable to live in a society where this kind of injustice is taking place.
Sure. Hey guys, I need you to get your. Oh, sorry, John. We'll keep going here 1 second. Get your questions ready. We're gonna wrap up this topic. We're gonna keep going because I'm very fascinated by John's view on this one. Yeah. And we'll finish this one up, and then we'll get those questions going. But I think
the point where I got arrested, we've been protesting for 8 days. I've been out there at protests for 8 days straight. Okay, and they had established that or the rules of the game is like, they give a dispersal order, then there's a parlay between the organizers and stuff like that, and then they give another dispersal order, and then there's another parlance and stuff like that, and we figure out, and eventually we're still like, the first one was not clear in any way, and so I'm like, okay, was that a dispersal? Like, we weren't even clear on that. They blew a whistle and just straight up bum rushed us. Officer taps me on this. I'm standing next to my mother. They had actually been out of town. They had just gotten back. My mom had come so I'm standing next to my mom. They tap me on the shoulder, say, "You're under arrest." And both of us are like, "Wait, what?" Next thing I know, I've got 3 officers slamming me up against the wall of a jewelry store. I've been recording with my cell phone, so I'm trying to get my phone into my pocket. Meanwhile, they're cuffing. They put the plastic cuffs on him properly, and I'm sitting there, and like, it's hurting, a lot, So I asked the officer who arrested me, like, "Hey, can you, like, redo these cuffs or something like that? You've got them put on wrong. It's cutting off circulation in my hand." He's got 10 of them hanging off his belt. He's like, "No, man, I can't do that. I don't have any more." It's like, okay, that's
what
how it's
a
gonna
punk! Be. Yeah, that's not cool. Well,
anyway, so that's most of that story.
I can't believe John Theodore was arrested. Actually, yes, I can for that. And here's the thing, too. I think libertarians would jump on board with that because we absolutely agree. But I think because it's become such a racial issue, it's hard to hop on board. We would definitely agree that
Yeah, I
two
didn't.
two
I
minute
don't think I remember seeing any libertarians out there in the streets with us.
No, I agree. You probably didn't. But
Yeah, and that's really disappointing because first off, we're in America. You got to recognize the reality of where we're coming from.
sure.
There are very few issues in America that are not a racial issue, given the history of our country.
Yeah.
We are only 100. What is it? The Civil War was 1860s, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 150 years removed from having slavery in America. We're less than 100 years removed from Jim Crow laws. We're 50 years removed from the Civil Rights Act. It's like, did just because we've corrected the many of the things that were written on the books that were directly racially discriminatory does not mean that we have addressed the other issues that contribute to systemic racism. So yeah, it's a racial issue because we live in America, and in America
Yeah.
we that is our history. That's our thing. Um, we what we need to do is recognize, own that, and grapple with it correctly. That's all the Black Lives Matter movement's saying. It's not saying that Black Lives matter more than other lives. It
Sure.
is saying that Black Lives Matter specifically because all lives matter. And until we address some things that are being done wrong in this society, we're going to be specific about this, because it seems that the way that the law and that justice are being administered, it seems like a lot of people do not think that Black lives are included in that all lives statement.
Mm. I hear that. I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say one more thing, and then we'll get on to the questions. This is very interesting, John. When I went to school as a freshman, I went to Fair State University. I went in for criminal justice, and my intention was to go to the police academy. And one thing I noticed is that they were teaching people there aggression first, and then try to figure out what's going on. And I think that's one of the issues with police now. Is there you hear the old saying, "Shoot first, ask question later," but it seems as if though that's what's being taught to the police today.
Better to be judged by 9 than carried by 6.
Yeah.
Is the other way that they say that. Yeah, I completely agree that a huge part of the problem is the training.
Yeah.
And I also think that it is a cultural problem. I think that there is a cultural problem that has been fed in these police departments for a long period of time. And I wanted to say 100%. I do not have anything personally against all police officers or any individual officer. I have an issue with the system, and I have an issue with any individual police officer who does hold racist thoughts in their heart, who does administer the law in an unjust and an unequal manner, and who does use force as a first measure rather than a last one.
Right, exactly. Yep.
So some of it comes down to the training, and then some of it does come down to a cultural thing. And the reason why that culture persists is that, again, like I was talking about, yes, you can change the way that the laws are written. But the thing is that 50 years ago, I would wager that most of the police captains at that time, when the laws were racist in nature, were racist themselves. And they were training racist police officers. So when they retired, maybe 10, 20 years later, a good portion of the people that they had trained were trained in that flawed ideology and took charge of those police departments and felt like that their job, even if they wouldn't admit it publicly, that their job was to administer justice in an unequal manner, was to keep the white people safe from the black people, right? And then, so again, that is a self-feeding culture that persists. So that cultural problem is something that still needs to be addressed. And again, it's not every police department, it's not every police officer, it's not every police captain.
Right.
But that is and look, that there are a few things that I've seen that have come out from some of these internal message boards, and in some ways that some police officers do talk, that I find extremely problematic. And you can see it in the way that they talk internally, or when they feel like no one else is listening. It's a real problem, right? So again, the solution to this is not to demonize all police officers, in my opinion, but we do need to point at the problem, recognize the reality of it, and then have a discussion about how we're going to solve it.
Yeah. Well, John, one question we got at the beginning of this thing, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. By the
Mhm.
way, I just want to let everyone know, doing an iRacing stream and talking about things like this, very dangerous, especially with the type of, I guess, demographic John has. Most, NASCAR fans are, pretty conservative, and not everyone sees eye to eye with John on this. And I've seen multiple times people walk out of his streams because he's talking politics, and I say,
That's fine, but
yeah,
like I said, I would much rather retain the freedom to be able to speak about things that
yeah,
I think that matter
yeah.
than to hold on to the viewers that are going to walk away because they take offense at my sincerely held beliefs on these things.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I've said I know John cares about people, so I can't be mad at him for expressing his opinions, even sometimes if I disagree with him, because I
Hmm.
legitimately know he cares. And so in that sense, I'm like, yay for you, John. Good job, man. So
Yeah.
one of the questions we had right out the gate, somebody asking about your little bottle there.
Hmm. Water.
Yeah.
It's
So,
definitely water.
so they had made this. Okay, it's water. There's the answer to the first question. Second question, they said they thought you heard you say one time that you don't drink. Period. Is that true?
No, I just don't drink on stream.
Yeah, because I think remember one time you said you had been drinking a night before in
No,
the stream. And
this empty bottle of Macallan right here, I came by very honest.
those are our Quaker friends right there.
I absolutely consumed them. All of this was consumed either by me or by friends or family who were consuming it with me at the time.
So why that
Um,
bottle? That's funny. Why do you use that bottle? Because it's
so I,
funny.
I change up the bottle.
Yeah. Is it for the
Why?
joke?
No. So why do I drink out of spent spent alcohol bottles?
Yeah.
Because this is the best way like this is the best thing to hold water when I'm drinking water on stream. I don't like drinking out of plastic.
BPA.
Yeah, it's just I don't like the taste
Oh,
more than
okay.
anything else. The water tastes better when it comes out of glass than it does when it comes out of plastic.
Mhm.
And I don't, especially when I've got my gloves and stuff on, these are a little bit clumsy when handling an actual drinking glass, right?
Mhm.
This is a much bigger thing to hold on to, and I'm much less likely to get my dirty mitts on top of the part that I'm actually drinking out of.
Yeah.
So this is the most practical means of delivering water to me during my stream, and it's fun.
There have been so many times people when John takes drinks that water, new people come in the stream like, "What is he drinking?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's speed."
Mm-hmm.
And-
Yeah, raw. I'm drinking raw speed, man. That's how I'm so fast.
Mark
Not
Mitchum.
not not the drug. It's like actual speed. It's like the concept of speed is what I'm consuming.
All right. Hey, Mark Mitchum wants to know who's that little buddy behind you. Uh,
That's Agamemnon.
a what?
Uh, Aggie for short.
Oh,
Um,
he's cute.
but yeah, Agamemnon, the Greek king in the Battle of Troy,
Oh,
is what he's named for. But yeah, he's a cutie. He is a rescue. He's a lab pit mix, and he is 2 years old.
he is cute, man.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's awesome.
Chris
Little
Carroll,
buddy.
your Beast Racing teammate. Two questions.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. Oh wait, nope. $1 trillion. What would be the first thing you fix in society?
$1 trillion. What would the first thing that I would
Well,
fix
first
in
of all, that's
society?
enough money to end world water issues. FYI.
Whew, that'd be a good one. Look, I mean, if we're $1 trillion, because I think, look, honestly, the first one, the primary issue for me, is access to adequate health care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if we're looking, yeah, at a global scale, getting adequate food, adequate water supply to folks, that's encompassed in the healthcare thing, in my
Okay.
opinion,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then education is the next one. So those two. Then again, that's why Bernie and Warren are my top two candidates, is because those are the only two candidates uh, running right now that have real answers to both those issues. And then there's the environmental issue. Um, the environmental one is a big thing because honestly, if we don't solve that, none of the other stuff really matters.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question from me. So
Mm-hmm.
if you remember back in the election, we got a political one again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody I knew that wasn't conservative was voting for Bernie. I didn't know a single person that was going to vote for Hillary. And then it appears some foul play goes on with the super PACs and all that, and Bernie winds up losing. So, well, first of all, I see I mean, do you disagree with
Yeah.
that or no?
Well, yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
that was a false narrative. Look, I was understand where I'm coming from on this. Okay,
Yeah.
I was on Bernie's. I was hoping that I did not like Hillary Clinton at all. When it was clear back in early 2015 that the Democratic Party was going to be backing her solely as like this is the only candidate we really want running in the primary, I was like, come on, Elizabeth Warren, I want her in. She didn't step in, and I understand why. And like I also understood why Elizabeth Warren did not endorse Bernie in advance of the Massachusetts primary. You got to understand that even though these are public figures and we really feel very detached and distant, these are still human beings. All right, they're people. Elizabeth Warren got into politics because of Hillary Clinton. That was her idol and her role model in a lot of ways. All right, Elizabeth Warren's path towards the political issues has been a little bit different from Bernie, but she's always been very much on the anti-corruption measures, income addressing income inequality, all the same issues. She is as genuine on those policies as Bernie is, in my opinion. Even though her path was different, she wasn't going and getting arrested protesting discriminatory housing practices in the 60s or in participating in marches the way that Bernie was.
Mm-hmm.
But she is very much, excuse me, genuine on those issues. So I was hoping Elizabeth Warren was going to. She didn't. Bernie did. I was like, oh, cool. I've heard of Bernie a little bit because he was on the Daily Show and Bill Maher a few times. So I've seen him. Didn't know him as much except for the crazy senator from Vermont that occasionally appeared on talk shows. He wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
significant political figure at the time. He was a virtual unknown. When he first entered the race, I think he was trailing Hillary Clinton by 80 or 90 points. He closed that gap in less than a year. That is a remarkable achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Because and again, the way that our news media works, it's like they ultimately make the determination of who they consider to be a viable candidate and who isn't. Bernie Sanders was not considered to be a viable candidate for a really long period of time, but that whole time while he was being written off, he was going out there. His first rallies were literally, it was like he was talking to some people who had set up some lawn chairs and stuff like that. The rallies started getting bigger and bigger and bigger as he started gaining traction because his early supporters were sharing out information on that on social media. And then we started finding him speaking on these issues and actually listening to what he was saying at these rallies. So even though the audience at one of these initial rallies may have been less than 100 people, it ended up reaching an audience of thousands because the internet age. 10, 20 years ago, he would have just been buried. He would have stayed at that 1-2%. No one would have ever heard of him. They wouldn't have debates or the Iowa caucuses. He would have fallen out of the race relatively quickly because the news media had no interest in covering him until his support base grew to a critical mass where they couldn't not cover what was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I jumped on I had moved back to St. Louis. So he announced I was still in Los Angeles. Girlfriend and I broke up. I moved back to St. Louis. I'm living there. I'm talking to them, driving them nuts, my folks nuts talking about Bernie. They're like, you should connect with the local volunteer group and get involved with that. It'd be a good way to, some people as you're trying to, get back integrated with St. Louis. I'm like, cool, yeah, that sounds good. So I go down to a local bar where they were having a Sanders social like every Tuesday, or it was the first Tuesday of something like that. It was like every couple weeks. I forget exactly what it was. Little bar, table in the back of a bar. I go in there, there's a guy who looks like me, a little bit smaller, same glasses, and like just add like 15 or 20 more years of like working against this, like the amount of like frustration and angst that comes out of working against the political establishment and losing. Like that, like me 20 years later of like just fighting and continuing to like gain no traction. That's who's there. And then there are like maybe 6 or 8 other people who show up. We talk about Bernie, we talk about strategy, and then the big thing was going to Iowa and canvassing at the caucuses. Because if you have a good showing in Iowa, all of a sudden now you're a real player, right? If you can win Iowa, oh my goodness, that would have been an earthquake. So I participated in phone banks, and I made 5 different trips to Iowa through the winter to go knock on doors and canvass for Bernie. And then after that, I was really involved and engaged in running the volunteer office that we had, one of the offices that we had here on St. Louis, and sending canvassers out for the campaign and stuff here. And so I was super deep involved in it. Bernie Sanders lost the primary because more people voted for Hillary Clinton. Full stop. Yes, there were some things that I thought were unethical that were done on behalf of the DNC. Yes, there were some things that were uncovered with emails, with Donna Brazil sharing questions about the debates beforehand.
Right.
That obviously I have a problem with that. But ultimately, the reason that Hillary Clinton won that campaign was because more people voted for her than voted for Bernie Sanders. I think that a huge part of that had to do with even though we did an amazing job, but we were again running against the clock. We had to close an 80-point gap in the polls in 9 months. That's
almost
that doesn't happen though.
It
Like
was almost
we got close.
Yeah.
We got it to within 5 or 10 points, but by the time we had closed it, a lot of the southeastern states had already gone. And you got to understand, like Hillary Clinton, the Clintons had a locked-in base with a lot of the states, with a lot of those churches, and understanding how those communities voted. And it's like there were, had Bernie been running a campaign that started out the way that this one did, with a real strategy to hit all 50 states, it could have been a very different thing.
Yeah.
But the reality was that he was playing to try to win a couple states where he felt where there were caucuses, where there was a better chance for a smaller campaign to make a more significant impact, build up a few delegates, and really it started out as just a protest campaign, just as he didn't start out thinking that he was going to have a shot at actually winning the nomination and winning the presidency. He started out thinking that literally no one is going to oppose Hillary Clinton. She's just going to be nominated unopposed. No, I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to run. I'm going to try to get on the debate stage with her. I'm going to push her on the issues.
Yeah.
Right. So like at least we're going to have a debate before we just anoint someone the nominee. It turned out that people did latch on, and it looked like he was going to have a viable shot. But man, that was a mountain to climb. It was amazing that he got as close as he did.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to discount at all the people who, any of the people who voted for him in those southeastern states, and Hillary Clinton won a huge portion of the African American vote in those states. And the reality is that her campaign went there, had a lot of capital built up because Bill Clinton was, the first president that really listened to the concerns of a lot of black voters in those areas. So I'm not going to illegitimize her victories in those states at all. She won there because her family had built up a reputation with the voters in those districts going back decades, and Bernie Sanders' campaign showed up at the 11th hour with no one knowing who this guy was. I understand why he lost so much in those states. Could it have gone differently with a different campaign strategy? with the news media covering him more? Absolutely, it could have. But again, I'm going to go back to the reality is that the reason that he lost in 2016 is because more people voted for Hillary Clinton.
I'm glad you were there for that because I never knew because
Yeah,
when you hear even the liberal news media was saying, "Oh, it looks like it was some shady dealings here."
there were some shady things that went on. There
Yeah,
were
yeah,
absolutely some shady things that went on. But at the end of the day, no votes were changed.
yeah.
No voting machines were hacked. The votes that were cast were the votes that were cast. Yeah,
Well,
the news media did an inaccurate, a
yeah.
they covered super delegates in a dishonest manner by putting them into the same count as the pledge delegates and saying that Hillary Clinton's lead was larger than it actually was.
Gotcha.
The news media, and the DNC initially tried to not have any debates, and then after some pressure, they put debates, but they put them on nights with low viewership, and the questions, there's all kinds of nitpicky stuff. The reality that we can get into, and it just like with the reasons that Hillary lost to Trump, there are 1,000 different reasons, some legitimate, some illegitimate, and we're like honest people can have differences of opinion on what they consider to be legitimate reasons and illegitimate reasons. The reality is the reason that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton was that he was able to get more electoral votes by having more people vote for him than her in the states that ultimately mattered in the way that we count
Right.
votes in the electoral college. I think that we should not use the electoral college to determine the presidency. I think that it should be done through a popular vote. And Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but that wasn't the rules under which that election was run. That election was run on an electoral college. And for a number of reasons, then like there are thousands of them, and Hillary Clinton, as I understand it, detailed a whole lot of them in her book. And I think there are probably some that she didn't necessarily cover. Although I think if I understand it, even though that she went through all kinds of things, and a lot of Bernie supporters attacked her for being spiteful and for unfairly attacking Bernie in the book, she did take responsibility and ownership of the fact that ultimately it was her responsibility as the candidate to earn those votes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's ultimately it's on her for losing.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. And she said that, and I agree with that. But there are all kinds of other reasons. Ultimately, Bernie and his campaign did not run a successful strategy to gain enough delegates to maintain a viable chance of winning the nomination early enough in the race. We got creamed. We did really well in Iowa. We did really well in New Hampshire. We did really well in a few of those other ones that were the smaller northeastern states, right?
Yeah.
We got creamed in the southeast, and then we started picking up momentum, and then it started being a more fair thing where we'd win one, she wouldn't win. We'd go back and forth like that, right? But it didn't start out equal.
Yeah.
And again, she's been running to try to become president for a lot longer than Bernie has. She had spent a huge amount of her career doing all the right things to position herself to make a run to position herself well to make a run at the presidency. That was her strategy. She wanted, probably back before Bill Clinton but definitely after her husband got the president, she wanted to be America's first female woman president, right? She had designed and strategized and tried to do things in the way that she thought you had to do them in American politics to make that goal a reality.
Right.
And we don't like the way that she did it. We don't like a lot of us, the country has gotten sick with the way that politics works, right?
Right.
When you're in bed with the wrong people, not literally, well, sometimes literally in bed with the wrong people, but figuratively in bed with the wrong people.
Yeah, I get you.
And doing a lot of things that make you seem dishonest and not genuine as a person. But the reality is that for a huge amount of time, that was how you attained that level of power. You you did think like everyone, they probably didn't want to go in and do it that way. But the reality is that before now, that was the way that you did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she thought that she was doing everything that was the right way to do things, even if some of those things might have not have been things that she was necessarily comfortable with.
Sure.
But the reality is that was what everything about the way that our society worked and the way that our political process worked told her that that's how it has to be done. If you want to be president, you have to make these connections. You have to know these people. You have to make concessions to this group of people and these group of people. Whether you actually agree with them or not, you have to build a coalition between all of these different people, and especially get these big money donors and things like that on board. And you have to establish yourself. You have to hold all these different offices and build this impressive she did. She had the most impressive resume of anyone who has ever sought the office of the presidency. And she got beaten by a reality TV show star who inherited every dollar that he's, most of them.
Yeah.
And who got, whether he solicited or not, he got help from Russia. And it was
Oh,
like,
John.
Listen. The Mueller report was very clear that Russia ran a very extensive and wide campaign. That there's no debate about that one anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so like what I'm saying is I understand why she's bitter. I still say that despite all of those caveats, it was her responsibility as the candidate to convince more people to vote for her in the states that mattered, and she failed at that.
Yeah.
And she's got on that, and we as the Democrats, as the Democratic Party, have to own that we make a case to the rest of the country to vote for our candidate, and we make a choice for one candidate. We need to be ruthlessly honest with ourselves, evaluate the decisions that we made, hopefully learn from those mistakes, make better decisions next time, and make a good case. Because again, in a democratic society, the debate about the issues is ongoing. If you want to be the political party in charge, if you want to be the folks that are making the decisions, then you need to convince the rest of the country that you're right.
Well, at least you guys got someone you could really get behind. This was the one year for us libertarians where we thought we could make a real crack at making a dent in the election. And who do we put forth? Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. Oh my gosh.
Dude, man, Johnson was
He was so horrible. You could not have picked a worse guy. This could be a year we really could have stole a ton of votes, and they put that guy in there.
Okay, so let me ask you this: who do you look to as a thought leader on for your version of politics?
Well, who do I think should be, or who do I think's in there now?
Who do you look to? Who when you go to like, that is the guy who is articulating my political positions the best. Who do you look to as a thought leader?
There's a guy. He actually ran. He lost to Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. His name is Austin Peterson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
name's familiar actually.
The weird thing, he's actually an atheist, but I think he's absolutely brilliant. He runs the Libertarian Republic news article right now, and. So yeah, that's who I was really pulling for, and I was like, if he gets in there, he has a shot because he's a young guy too. But of course, they put Gary Johnson in there.
Look, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing to you guys on the Libertarian side that I say to the folks on the Green Party. If you're serious about making a crack at the presidency, you got to show me that you can at least win a state representative seat.
Our only hope is Rand Paul, but. You know,
he's not a libertarian, dude.
Oh, I know he's not.
He's a Republican, and he votes against the libertarian position and with the Republicans on almost every single vote.
Well, that's my point being, the only shot we have.
His father, Ron Paul, was a genuine libertarian, as I understand it.
Rest his soul. No, he's not dead, but he's pretty much retired now, which is really sad.
Yeah.
We loved him, and so.
I have seen that Rand Paul does appear to like. I've seen him take principled stances on issues with civil rights, though. So I don't want to say that Rand Paul's all bad. It seems like when push comes to shove in the votes, he votes right along with the party line.
Okay. Spike wants to know. Oh, yeah. Sorry. We'll go back to the questions here.
Go for it. Yeah.
Spike wants to know, are you going to run the street stocks at Bristol this week? Oh boy.
Probably not because, as previously mentioned, I'm out of town Tuesday through Friday.
Oh, sorry, Spike. I saw it. I just got him on a question he's very passionate about, and he actually corrected me on, which is good. You got any more, Spike? So much fighting. Oh, how many people come into your streams and leave because you're liberal? How many would you say? I know I've seen a ton.
No, I wouldn't phrase it as a ton. Honestly, at this point, it's pretty rare. Most folks know where I'm at, and look, like I said, like there'll be every once in a while we'll get a guy who types it in chat. I have noticed that when I start talking politics during practice, I keep an eye on the viewer count. It'll dip by like 10 or 15. So accurately putting a number on that, who knows?
Yeah.
I've gotten a decent amount of flack in the YouTube comments as well, but honestly, like that is as far as my viewership, it's an extremely vocal minority. The overwhelming number of people who are in my chat and my YouTube comments are people who, whether or not they agree with me with my political views, at the very least are there because they like me as a person. They're rooting for me rather than against me.
Mm-hmm.
The like-dislike ratio on my videos is usually like over 90%. The only one that really had that, even the one where I was talking about earlier where I wrecked the guy, that one's still like 65% in my favor. So most of the people who watch me like me. Now let me just address these two from Spike. Who's the best viewer?
It's got to be It's Me, Randy.
Well, I gotta go with my buddy Mike, man. He's been with me literally from the beginning, streaming to no one and had no clue what
Oh no.
my stream was literally 2 viewers, and those viewers were me watching myself so that I could monitor chat and Mike. So I gotta go with Mike. He's been there the longest. Why did I wreck Spike 5 flags in the street stock? I don't know.
Best answer.
I don't know. Did you probably, I don't know, like either I slipped or you came down on me, dude. Like
Mike's a beast racer now, by the way.
I didn't do it. Yeah, Mike's actually Nathan Spotter in Road to Pro, and
yeah, good guy. I really like him.
I want to give a shout out, Beast Racing shout out, and a little bit of a brag. Beast Racing, with a setup that Mike created, occupies the top 6 spots on the world record charts at Dover right now.
Oh, are you serious? Okay,
I'm
that
dead
means I got to go
serious.
and run some Dover laps then. See what I can do. Yeah, which, by the way, guys, Beast, I can practice tomorrow night if you guys have some time because there's no Road to Pro tomorrow night.
There is no right. Tomorrow night is peak, so there's no Road to Pro tomorrow. I might actually hop in and run that Road to Pro next week at Dover just because it's like that setup is so good, and I put those laps in on it. Like I might actually have to get in there and run it. Just
make sure you survive. That's gonna be the hard part.
Yep.
Yep. So here
it could be coming next week.
Here's a question I have for you too. This will be it, guys. We'll wrap it up after this. Now, here's the crazy thing, John. My favorite John Theodore moment is not even on YouTube because it got so out of hand. I don't know if you remember this or not.
I remember.
I think it was at Chicagoland. Was it at Chicagoland?
No, that was at Daytona, man.
Oh yeah, okay. And
he fixed at Daytona.
Yes, exactly. And and some guy had a Trump scheme going, and
no one had a Trump scheme.
No Trump scheme.
I don't think it was someone in the. It was gosh, what was his?
I hate to say names.
It was like Gary King, if I remember correctly, started stirring it up in chat, and I took the bait, and a few other guys in the race took the bait.
Oh yeah,
and it
so
evolved
awesome
from there.
Yeah, and like the weird thing was like just some of the shocking things other drivers said. I was like, no way did I ever think I'd hear those things in iRacing. Yep.
I wasn't surprised at all, man.
I never heard anything like that. Oh my goodness.
You.
Well, I mean, never things that were like blatantly racist, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
We are fans of the only sport in America that you can go to and see Confederate flags on display at the event.
Well, I wouldn't. Well, that'd be another debate, I guess. I guess maybe the appearance now is racist, but their origins weren't supposed to be.
The origins of the Confederate flag was flying over the states that were claiming the argument they were making for states' rights was the states' rights to determine whether or not people could own slaves on their own.
Oh.
The flag is absolutely the entire history is racist in origin, and the entire backstory behind it. Yeah, it's. But again, it's like you go to a baseball game, you'll never see a Confederate flag. You go to a hockey game, you'll never see a Confederate. You go to a football game, you'll never see one. Only at a NASCAR race are you going to see that thing. And look, and it like now you don't see them in the infield, but you definitely see them out in the parking lot. But like,
Hmm.
when was the last time you watched Days of Thunder?
Oh yeah, they're in there. I just watched it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they're not just in there; they
Yeah.
are like front and center for, if not the majority of the opening shots,
Yeah, the first 5 minutes.
the opening shots in the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's like there is Confederate flag front and center. So
Yeah, that's funny.
I wasn't surprised. Look, it in this country, people who hold those beliefs have learned that they're not popular and that they will get shut down if they espouse those beliefs outside of their safe spaces, right?
Hmm.
Until Donald Trump came along and just started saying it and ran a successful campaign, not blowing dog whistles, but just saying blatantly that Mexico is sending that literally he opened his campaign by saying that Mexico was sending rapists and drug dealers, as if these were not people who are coming to our country choosing to leave Mexico to
How
come
did
to
we
our
get here,
country.
John?
You brought up the be fixed race.
Well, that's
How we
true.
got
I'm
there.
sorry. I'm sorry.
So again, what he literally said, and when he opened his campaign, was the insinuation that he was making, if you play it out, is that these are not people who are choosing of their own free will to leave Mexico and come here because they prefer our government, they prefer our way, our form of running things, and they are seeking economic opportunity that we all were born into for themselves, right? They want the life that we got by birthright. They want a shot at that. No, what he was insinuating was that Mexico is handpicking their worst sinning citizens and sending them to us as an invading army. And they are specifically saying, no, we're not going to lock our rapists up. We're going to send them to America. That's clearly an inaccurate. That is an inaccurate thing, but that's a terrible way to talk about our neighbor to the south, Mexico. They're supposed to be an ally, right? We do trade with them. We got, like they're not a hostile nation to us. And
Yeah.
to talk about those people and to imply that all people coming from Mexico are not the best and brightest of Mexico, but are criminals. That is the definition of racism. And he was not. Again, like it used to be that it was framed under the guise of, well, states' rights, or there are a number of dog whistles that were used to disguise where it was like, we're going to say this, and it's not going to be over, or we're going to have plausible deniability. We're not talking. No, we're not anti black people. We're just talking about the rights of states to be able to set the laws themselves. Well, which rights? Oh, well, we're not, the slavery, but or Jim Crow, or like it's interesting that all the rights that they were concerned about, things being able to decide from themselves, were, or at least a lot of them had to do with racial discrimination, segregation, and all these things.
Yeah.
So that's how you get that coded language in the dog whistles. And then Donald Trump comes out and is just running a campaign, not with the dog whistles, but just explicitly saying those things that were supposed to tank a candidacy. Like, and that was why he wasn't taken seriously for so long, is that it was just assumed that if you just said that stuff openly, you weren't going to be a viable candidate. You would be laughed out of the room. Well,
Yeah.
it turned out that uh, there were a lot more people in the country that we thought that actually held those beliefs, and there were a lot more, and then there were also a lot more people in the country we thought that didn't necessarily hold those beliefs, but were okay with looking the other way as long as they got a couple other things that they wanted, right?
Right. Well,
You know, and that was a wake up call, I think, for all of us in America, and I mean, so like that's why it's like I don't think that everyone on iRacing thinks that way. I don't think everyone in the NASCAR thinks that way. We talk a lot about how in iRacing how kind a community is in contrast to other games,
yeah,
right?
that's definitely true.
And
Yeah.
civil and respectful. And the experience that I have at when I go to NASCAR races and sit in the fans, I want to be completely clear about this, is overwhelmingly positive. Folks are nice. We root for different drivers, but it's always a real pleasant exchange back and forth in the stands. But so there's that. But at the same time, you drive into the track, it's hard to miss the Confederate flag flying there. And it's also hard to miss, the when I was there at a race at Auto Club Speedway, we're coming out, and the one of the fans just starts spouting, you know, homophobic slurs about Kyle Busch because he was unhappy Kyle Busch won. It's like that's you know so
That sounds like
when
a NASCAR race, so
no, but okay,
yeah.
but like, look, if we want to have a real discussion about why NASCAR's having more problem, all live sports are declining. NASCAR's having more problem than most. That's part of it, okay? And that's the elephant in the room, and I don't think it's talked about a lot. Is that if you're going to have mass appeal in this day and age, you can't really be making your environment an unwelcome place for significant parts of the populace, right?
Right.
I can go there as a cisgendered, white, straight man and not have any fear of being made uncomfortable for who I am as a person, right? But can I necessarily say that about, my friends, folks who are African American going there, that they're not going to have a really unpleasant experience by some fan who has a few too many beers and decides that they're going to smart off? Can I say that about my friends who are gay? Am I? Are you going to tell me that I'm going to take them there and they're going to have as a good experience at the end of the day if that kind of stuff is being said openly? Like what is the incentive for them to take time to invest in a sport that they're not necessarily a fan of and try to learn something about? That's the way that they're welcomed into the gates, right? So, we the reality is that level of intolerance towards people who are different from you is not is no longer popularly held in the mainstream the way that it was a few decades ago in this country, right?
Sure.
When Tim Richmond contracted AIDS, he wasn't given the proper treatment, and a lot of that had to do with the misunderstanding about that disease and the as being something that only gay people got, and the hatred and the misunderstanding of what it was to be gay, and the reaction that people have.
What did they
People have
wait? Did they assume Tim Richmond was gay, or
no, but he concealed that he had that disease
hmm.
for a long period of time, and a lot of the medications and the things like that he was ran out not because he was gay, but because that they didn't want that stigma associated with NASCAR.
Gotcha. Okay.
And ultimately his case has become one that opened up a lot of that understanding and got the NASCAR community to understand with greater detail. And that's the thing. Like, look, I ultimately believe that a lot of these people do have good hearts. Some might not, but I think that most NASCAR fans, from what I've seen, do. Right? But it's it's a level of misunderstanding. I do think that if these people who shout these things understood fully uh, the pain that talking about other people in that way caused, that they wouldn't necessarily do it, right?
Right.
You know, there is a certain thing of like that we talk about with like guys being guys and stuff like that, where we like to be flippant, we like to joke around and do hard humor and diss on each other as a way, as a mutually respectful way of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's cool. Like some people like that, but not everyone does, right? And not everyone's going to engage. And I don't think that everyone ever does it with the intent to harm. It's a form of camaraderie, right?
Right.
For the most part, there are, and again, there are absolutely some people who do that with an intent to harm and do have a more cynical approach where they actually want to inflict harm on those people. They're again, like kind of like I was talking about earlier with the guys that hit me with the trolls or the real hate on that. They're an extremely vocal minority in their extremism, but I do believe that's minority. But again, when that kind of talk is tolerated at your events, it makes it difficult to bring other people in because they're not going to feel welcome there. All right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like that while NASCAR's fan base is extremely kind and open and welcoming, you gotta understand that it feels kind of open and welcoming to a specific subset of the
Till
population.
old Billy Bob gets a few in him.
Right, like, and so look, if we
Yeah.
really want our sport to survive and thrive in this new era, we gotta clean our own house. We can't keep pointing the finger outwards. We gotta look within, and we gotta put our best foot forward when we're welcoming new folks in.
Well, guys, man, John, can you believe that was 2.5 hours? You believe that?
Absolutely, because I get to the same thing at the end of my podcast, and it's like the same thing. Man, the time just flies.
It's gone. It's crazy. Well, hey, I just want you to know, John, I appreciate you a ton. You were definitely a force for good night racing. Thank you for that. And that's what I
Thank
appreciate
you.
most for you. And guys, if you want to check
Appreciate
him
you
out,
too.
it's twitch.tv John underscore A underscore Theodore.
That's
Most
right.
of you probably already there. And just thank you, John. And by the way, that's really cool. I found out you're a Quaker today. I love that. I'm going to call you John the Quaker from now on.
Huh.
And
I'll pick up another nickname to go with Teddy.
hey, and congratulations, Kirby. Glad to hear. And you got us right at the end. Hey, by the way, John, I have a tradition. You probably don't know this, but it came from you.
Okay.
When I first started doing the streaming thing, I was about a month and a half in. I had 40 followers, and I came in your stream one day. I'm like, hey, how you doing, John? Like, hey, Randy, all this stuff. And I said, hey, man, I'm like 10 away from getting affiliate. And you said, hey, guys, go follow him. And then all of a sudden, my mailbox just explodes.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It definitely got me to fill it and it got me a little bit over. So now what we do is when we end our Twitch streams, we try to find somebody smaller that we can raid
Oh, I like
and
that idea.
and drop
Yeah.
everybody off into. And we usually say something silly. We'll say like some
Okay.
old school driver or something like that, or like Dick Trickle or something. And oh, come on, not many iRacers around right now, and it has to be an oval iRacer. Let's see
Okay.
what we got
Well,
here.
I mean, if you want, I can go ahead and spin up my stream.
Go ahead, get going, get going.
We can transition over here.
Let's do that.
Okay.
But the rule is they still got to say somebody. We're gonna say
So let me get it. I gotta
John
get
the
up and
Quaker.
going. There we
Go ahead.
go. Yeah. So I'm gonna run Talladega, and then I'm gonna run National Series at Homestead.
All right, we're ready for you.
All right. Streamlabs is booting up. Doo-doo-doo. Thanks, Windows. So is this going up on YouTube after?
It will. I gotta wait 24 hours now
Awesome.
because Twitch has got those new
Yep.
rules. But yeah.
Yeah, get in all kinds of trouble. It's gonna be great. I can't wait to see the hate that comes on my.
I already got a letter about
'Cause
it.
I went a lot deeper than I usually stuff.
Oh yeah, well that was kind of the point too. So
Mm-hmm.
it was
All
good.
right. Oh man, I'm having issues here. It's not recognizing my camera. Let me just do. Come on, Streamlabs, figure it out.
Kirby, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's big news. And we appreciate you listen to the whole thing, man. That was a.
All right, so I got to figure out why my webcam's not working. I think it's because it's on Discord right now. So let me actually.
Oh yeah, you have to turn it off.
Yeah,
Turn
so
it off.
do that.
And then it'll turn on. That's why I couldn't have you on there.
Okay. Let me see if it picks up now. That's so weird.
You might have to restart
It won't let
Streamlabs
it
too.
go. Yeah, it won't let it go from 2 sources.
All right. Well, you know what? We'll end this Discord call.
All right. Yeah.
And,
Let me go ahead and fully end it, and then I'll get spun up. But if you find someone else to host, that's cool too.
Yep, we'll find it.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Appreciate you, John. Check you out soon. Bye.
All right. Take care.
All right, guys. So we're gonna give him 2 minutes, and we're gonna raid in on Mr. John Theodore. And until then, I just want to thank you. Excuse me. I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Man, that was intense. Mr. Theodore, he's very passionate about the politics, and obviously we don't agree on everything, which is fine. It was cool that we get to talk about that a little bit. I've never gotten political on any of my streams ever, so it's kind of cool to get that out there. And as soon as he gets up and going, we'll raid him. So let's get going. Let's see if he's up online here real quick. How's everyone doing tonight? And here's what I want you to do. Kirby just gave his most recent results. Give me your results from your most recent race and how you think you did. My last race, geez, it was over a week ago because I've been so busy. I think my last race was at Five Flags in K&N, and I got like a P7 in the top split. I could have done better too, but we got wrecked a little bit in there. So, hey, it is what it is. And we'll see if he's going here. Okay, I don't see him yet. We'll try. We will try. Oh, it's hot in here too. All right, we're gonna assume he's up now. Let's do it. There we go. Go ahead and hit that raid button, guys. P7 at home said, awesome, Gabriel. Gabriel, you are the man, and I love racing with you. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. It was awesome. And make sure you catch us in the next race. I'm going to try to run one tomorrow night because we do not have Road to Pro tomorrow night. P1 Homestead. Nathan did say that. Hey guys, okay, so when you get in the chat, don't say, who should we say for our driver? Let's say, who's kind of an obscure driver? Mark Mitchum. Yeah, let's say Mark Mitchum. Let's do it. Ready, set, go. Check you guys out in the next one.